Thank you, everyone. I want to welcome you to tonight's February Quorum Court meeting. I welcome all our justices and all the public for being here and having input. Tonight, I've asked us if Justice Anderson will do us the pleasure of the honor of prayer and pledge. Justice Anderson, will you cue your mic?
Our dear Heavenly Father, we thank Thee for this opportunity to be here to work with our county's business, and that we would pray that Thou would be with us to make the right decisions. Father, we thank Thee for all the things that Thou hast given us, and we pray that Thou would be with us throughout this day and this evening and allow us to return to our homes in safety. Father, we do all these things in the name of Thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Justice Anderson. All right, where are we at here? And with that, we'll move to the adoption of the agenda. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda? Justice Ricker?
Yes, sir. I'd like to make a motion to amend the agenda and move items 12, 13, and 14, which all have to do with the Molly Wagnon conditional use permit from this month till next month.
Okay, I have a motion by Justice Ricker to postpone 31 month
12, 13, and 14.
items 12, 13, and 14. I had a second by Justice Anderson. Is it on this subject or? Justice Rio Stafford?
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, we'll need to vote on this, and I have a different
A separate
amendment.
motion?
Yeah, I
Okay.
do.
Any discussion on this side, these items? You have a different one or? Okay. Let's vote, let's take that up first. You have discussion on this, the Molly Wagnon? Justice Simons?
Yeah, I know there's some real estate transactions pending our decision on this, so I'd hate to further delay this. I'd like to consider this tonight.
Molly Wagner, okay. I do have a motion and by Justice Ricker, a second by Justice Anderson. All those in favor? Those opposed? No. We'll keep that item on the agenda. Justice Rio Stafford?
Thank you, Judge. I'd like to pull item number 6 from the consent agenda.
Okay, that we'll go ahead and do that. Let's see where we will. Right to the
20?
no, let's move it to the first part. Can we move it to the first part?
Yes, 16.
I'll make that a new item 16, if that's okay with you. First item on new business.
Mine was also to pull number 6.
Pull number 6. That doesn't require a vote. That's just a pleasure of the justice. So any other amendments to the agenda? Mm-hmm. Okay, do I have a motion to amend, or I'm sorry, to accept, to approve the agenda? I need the original, you making the original motion? Okay, I have a motion to approve the agenda by Justice Lemming, second by Justice Lyons. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? The agenda has been adopted. Preliminary motions, are there any preliminary motions this evening? Justice Dean?
Yes, Judge. I'd like to move that all ordinances and resolutions be read by title only.
Okay, I have a motion to read resolutions and ordinances by title only by Justice Dean. Second by Justice Lyons. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Ordinances and resolutions will be read by title only. All right, that moves us to the citizens' comments portion. We have a 15-minute citizen comment period with limit 3 minutes per person. Come forward, state your name and where you live, and we'll get this started. Okay, seeing no citizen comments, we'll move to approval of the minutes. The minutes were emailed out with the agenda packet. If there are no corrections, the minutes are approved. Does anyone have any corrections to the minutes? Okay, those will be approved. County Judge's report. I just want to say thank you to the 4-H, Washington County 4-H Club for providing us snacks night. That's always a great way to start an evening here, and you guys are so very gracious to us, and I want to take a special moment to thank you for that. The county disposal report is in your packet. As we all know, in the last few weeks, we've had a great opportunity to test our winter weather response with our road department. And so, I want to say that we've gotten some good feedback, I believe, through our response to that event, couple events there over the last several weeks. All that to say that we have a very dedicated road department and some great leadership, I think, in that area. And so they're always very self-critical, and that's going to be a continuous improvement. So they held themselves to high standards, and I'm here to support them doing that work. But I just want to give them a huge thank you for what they did during that. We run the road department very heavy during that time. We switched to 24-hour shifts. And those can start to wear on people when you get several days of a response like that. So everybody did a great job, and I just want to tell them, that I appreciate them, and I think hopefully I can speak on behalf of this Quorum Court to say thank you for them too for all that they've done. I also want to give a shout out to our buildings and grounds crew. Until you're here and you can help lead that team, you never really respect. It's not just salting the sidewalks and making sure our parking lots are cleared. Those people are working throughout the storm to make sure our buildings are in good shape. We had a bad incident there on Christmas Eve with a sprinkler head blowing. So it's to monitor and keep up our buildings, and I appreciate that crew too. And once again, hope I can speak on behalf of the Quorum Court to say thank you to that crew. I want to welcome our newest member. Justice Coleman Taylor received an appointment from Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders on Monday, and so we've gotten him in here and got him sworn in. My office is ready to help him try to get up to speed and get debriefed on some issues, and so we're proud to have him here. And Justice Taylor, I don't know if you want to say a few words or introduce yourself, but if you do, cue your mic up on the hit the little. There you go.
I just want to say thanks to the judge right fast for his willingness to walk me through the appointment, and look forward to serving the county for what little time I have, and then getting out of everyone's way. So here I am.
We appreciate having you here, and we know you're going to do a great job of representing the people of District 1, and you've got some pretty big shoes to fill. I know you've been told, so we're excited to have you here. As we all know, the legislature's in full gear down in Little Rock. I've spent some time last week and this week down there just trying to make sure that they understand that their actions affect our level of government, and make sure they know what our desires are, and so that they can take those into consideration for what we're doing. We have I want to give a shout out to the Association of Arkansas Counties. They do a wonderful job to keep us informed about what's on the agenda down there and what's being looked at, and allowing us to have our voices be heard with those legislators. And the legislators have been very open and welcome to us, so I want to give them a thanks. But I'd also like to, at the risk of forgetting somebody, I want to point out some things. We're all involved in our association through our sub-associations, if you will. The Quorum Court has an association through the AAC, the county judges do, several of us do. But in addition to that, I want to just give some people some kudos. Our prosecutor, Matt Durrett, is currently the president of the Prosecutors Association, so he's spending a lot of time down there making sure that they understand what our needs are up here in Washington County. In addition, Assessor Hill is the secretary and treasurer of his Assessor Association, and our circuit clerk, Kyle Sylvester, is currently serving as president of his association. So Washington County is leading not only in our county, but we're down in the state leading on issues too. And I just want to give a quick thank you to those people. That takes extra time out of their lives to be down in Little Rock a lot, advocating once again for our needs. So if you see those people, give them kudos. Update on Tunnel to Towers. We're going to talk about that tonight. I don't want to get ahead of that, and we're going to discuss that some more, but we've got that seemed to have been really hit the ground running, and I continue to ask you guys to help us promote that. And we've got some exciting developments that our Director Dykes will cover when we come to that point on the agenda. Finally, I have one board appointment. If you remember last meeting, we made several appointments to the Washington Water Authority Board. Subsequent to that, one of the members went back and reviewed the bylaws and decided he didn't think he was eligible to serve on that board. And so that left a new appointment still pending. So with that, I'd like to suggest the nomination of Howard Carter of Farmington to serve in that capacity on that board and join the new members and doing some fine work that they've already started with the Washington County Water Authority. I need a motion, which I think. I have a motion to accept by Justice Dennis and a second by Justice Lemming. All those in favor? All those opposed? I'll welcome Mr. Carter to the board tomorrow morning, so I appreciate that so much. With that, I think we're on to unfinished business. Is that right? Counselor, will you read item number 8 by title only?
An ordinance enacting a code of ordinances for the County of Washington, State of Arkansas, revising, amending, restating, codifying, and compiling certain existing general ordinances of the political subdivision dealing with subjects embraced in such code of ordinances and declaring, well, we took the emergency out, so.
Justice Dennis.
I move that we pass this ordinance.
This is on its second reading. We'll have a motion to
Okay.
suspend the rules.
I move we suspend the rules and read for
Third and
another
final
time.
time. Okay. I have a
and
motion
final.
to suspend the rules and read for a third and final time by Justice Dennis. Second by Justice Simons. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, that'll move to the third and final reading. Counselor Lester, would you like to read that for a third and final time?
As soon as it comes back up.
An ordinance enacting a code of ordinances for the County of Washington, State of Arkansas, revising, amending, restating, codifying, and compiling certain existing general ordinances of the political subdivision dealing with subjects embraced in such code of ordinances.
Justice Dennis?
I move that we pass 23-00006, 8.1.
I have a motion to pass item number 8. By Justice Dennis. I have a second by Justice Ecke. Further discussion? Are you good? Justice Koger?
I'd just like to get some clarification.
Just a
that-
second. Will you pull your mic down a little
Oh,
bit?
I'm so
closer?
sorry.
There you go.
I'm sorry, I'd like to get some clarification maybe from the county attorney that this just, when we adopt this code, it's not going to affect resolutions because resolutions weren't included in the codification. So any resolutions that are out there concerning public comments and other stuff, those are still valid. Is that correct?
Yeah, this doesn't have anything to do with resolutions. They're not codified because they're not laws. They're not enforceable. They're just suggestions. But so this only affects the ordinances that were actually out there. Doesn't get rid of any of them. It just codifies them in a new format.
Thank you.
Further discussion? Remind me, I had a motion by Justice Dennis. Who was my second? Justice Ecke? Sorry about that. I need to make a note. Any further discussion or questions? Public comments on this item? Seeing none, we'll bring up the question. I have a motion to pass item number 8 by Justice Dennis, a second by Justice Ecke. Ms. Myra, will you please call the roll?
Sean Simons. Fred Anderson. Kyle Lyons. Lisa Ecke. Charles Dean. Chandra Washington. Beth Koger. Robert Dennis. Suki Hires. Evelyn Rio Stafford. Willie Lemming. Gary Ricker. Butch Pond. Coleman Taylor. David Wilson. Pass.
Thank you, Ms. Myra. That item number 8 is adopted. Item number 9 is the Shop Solutions CUP appeal. I want to go over this structure with our members really quickly about how we're going to tackle this and eat this elephant one bite at a time. First, we're going to hear from our planning department on their presentation of the project. After that, we will have the applicant come up for any possible comments. There'll be a 30-minute time limit to that. And then after that, we will allow any members of the public to come up and comment on the project, and there'll be a 30-minute time limit on that also. There'd be 30 minutes. Is that correct? It'd be 30 minutes. So after that, we will have the opportunity as justices to discuss the items. That's where I would bring up any questions you might have. After everybody's been presented, we can bring additional people up to answer any questions about the project you might have. And then after the discussion is complete, we will then move into whether we want to adopt or approve or deny the project, and we can have debate on that after that, if you will give me the grace of walking through the process in that order. I'd like for everybody to have the opportunity to present before we start firing questions at them, if everybody accepts that. And with that, we will start with our planning department. I see. How are you, sir?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good.
I want to say thank you very much for your time this evening to hear the Shop Solutions CUP appeal. A conditional use permit is sought for Shop Solutions to develop an industrial complex on Sonora Road, south of 412 East around Sonora. It will consist of 4 9,000 square foot buildings, each building having 6 1,500 square foot rental units. The shops are intended for small companies with 1 to 3 employees. Retail business is not anticipated or desired, and it will not have heavy machinery, industrial-sized storage, or manufacturing on site. No storage or use of toxic chemicals or pesticides, chemicals on premises. The surrounding uses are largely undeveloped agricultural and residential, with a spattering of commercial and light industrial along 412 East to the north, in addition to Springdale schools being situated due west. We've been contacted by several concerned parties, one of which being Springdale Schools, about traffic without appropriate safety measures contributing to dangerous traffic conditions, and neighbors, the general gist being general incompatibility, traffic on Sonora Road, safety and property value concerns. Since the presentation given before Planning Board, we have a new survey indicating that the development doesn't take the entire parent parcel. It's only 3 acres to the west. If approved, Planning Department recommends any further additions or significant modification has to go before Planning Board. Tenants are not engaged in retail as a primary business. No heavy machinery, industrial-sized storage, or manufacturing on the premises. No storage or use of toxic chemicals. The number of units, 24, is a maximum and may need to be reduced if the septic system designed will not support the demand. Driveway entrances, a maximum of 60 foot in width. And the history is at the November Planning Board, the CUP was approved 4-1. And in December, a citizen, Bobby Ray Hafines, filed an appeal. The objections being traffic problems, safety concerns, compatibility and property value issues, stormwater drainage, application questions, and light, noise, and other pollution issues. I'm here to answer any questions, and the applicant is also here.
Thanks, Blake. I think we're going to try to save our questions, so if you'll stick around, that might be good. And then before we open it up to the applicant, I would like to ask if there's any other agencies here to speak on this tonight, any other governmental agencies?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. And with that, is the applicant here ready to speak on this project? Okay, we'll move to that.
Good evening. My name is Brian Jesse, and I live in Fayetteville. My wife Katie and I are the sole owners of Mountainside Properties, LLC, and the sole developers of this property. Thank you to Judge Deakins and the JPs for hearing our request regarding a conditional use permit for our land on Sonora Road. We have purchased a 3.1 acre property on Sonora Road just south of the stoplight on Highway 412. Pending approval, we plan to build 4 9,000 square foot buildings, each with 6 1,500 square foot units for a total of 24 units, to lease to small businesses. Each unit will be heated and cooled, have an overhead door, a storefront door, and a half bathroom. These will be steel buildings and will look almost identical to the building on your screen. The industry refers to these types of units as small bay warehouses. In the most recent Skyline report by Arvis Bank, released last quarter, this type of warehousing accounts for the lowest vacancy rates in our area. The most recent vacancy rate is just 0.8% as of the first half of 2022. This tells us that there is virtually no vacant space for businesses looking for smaller units like these. With 30 people a day moving to our region, 11,000 people a year, small businesses and startups like those that will occupy our units are crucial for that continued growth. Our facilities are not designed for industrial tenants, retail tenants with frequent customers, or restaurants. Our target tenants will be small, service-oriented businesses, plumbers, electricians, insurance agents, auto detailers, screen printers, bike repair shops. These are the types of businesses that we plan to have renting these spaces. Businesses that support the local community and need spaces like these to thrive. We are not only the owners, but will also be the property managers upon completion. We will maintain the facility to be aesthetically pleasing and hold high expectations for our tenants to do the same. This CUP was appealed by members of the local community. I wanted to address the concerns that I heard from these community members in the appeal. The first concern was regarding traffic and safety, considering the close proximity to the local elementary school. This property is located 400 feet south of the intersection of Sonora Road and Highway 412. That intersection contains one of only 2 stoplights in the county outside of city limits. There's also a center turn lane that runs the full length of our property and beyond, making the road 36 feet wide. The only traffic issues on Sonora Road are during the pickup and drop-off times at the school directly across the road from our property. Traffic impacts are consistently 15 minutes in the morning and 30 minutes in the afternoon. After having spoken with the principal and security officer at the school, both expressed minimal concerns once they had a clarification on our project. In response to traffic concerns, the principal said, quote, "Regardless of whether the project is approved or not, I will do whatever I need to do to keep the traffic flow as smooth as possible while keeping the children safe." I have also spoken with Jeremy White, Springdale School District's maintenance director, who said he will continue to work with the county to keep the lights programmed to align with school start and end times, and felt confident that we can have a positive working relationship and collaborate to ensure a safe environment for our students. We will let our tenants know about these windows of time to encourage them to avoid Sonora Road. However, even when vehicles are backed up onto the road remains safe and accessible for two-way traffic thanks to the center turn lane. On a side note, we look forward to building a positive relationship with the school. The principal and I have already discussed possible partnerships should we be allowed to move forward. I was a school administrator and counselor for 13 years, and my wife was a special education teacher also for 13 years. We both hold safety and security of our school children as a top priority, and we will do whatever we can to support and partner with the school. Excuse me. The second concern on the appeal was regarding compatibility and property values. The closest house to our development is 900 feet away. The closest house to our property on Santa Rosa Drive, which is the neighborhood that submitted the appeal, is over a quarter of a mile away as the crow flies and over a half a mile away by car. In close proximity to our property also are a refrigeration company, a Dollar General, a coffee shop, a food truck court, a Baptist church, 2 schools, a gas station, a fire station, and a stone company. With the neighboring lot also being listed for sale as a commercial development opportunity, I would argue that this is an incredibly appropriate use of this land. Our design of the buildings and landscape will be aesthetically pleasing and well-maintained. I understand that the local residents are nervous based on previous approvals for a shipping container storage facility and an auto salvage yard, but I can assure everyone we are neither of those. We will be positive members of the community and maintain a high standard for our tenants. I would anticipate many of these concerned citizens will ultimately benefit from the businesses within our development. Some residents express concern that our buildings will cut into their line of sight. I'm sorry. Did it freeze up on you?
Slide number 6, right?
Yep. Yeah, it's been the same one.
That's 5, 6, and 7.
I don't think it's showing up on your TVs up here.
Yeah, froze. Yeah, I mean, it's not showing.
Did you want me to wait, or did you want me to continue?
I think if you could go ahead and still provide commentary, we'll see if that catches up to you.
Sure.
But in the interest of time, I think we should continue.
So some of the residents expressed concern that our buildings will cut into their line of sight in the backyard. I do have a slide with a drone video taken at the elevation of the highest point of our building elevation. And in that video, it gives you a little bit better idea of where the property's at and what you can see from the property from the highest point of the buildings. There was also a comment raised about drainage. A full 38-page stormwater management report has been completed and was included in the application. We have built into the design a detention pond and will follow all of the recommendations in that report. I know that there have been some concerns regarding the size of our project since it was originally reported to be on a 25-acre tract. According to the Planning and Zoning Office, it was already stated in the notification letters that went out to the community, but I just wanted to state again that we have split off a 3.1 acre tract from that original 25 acres. It has been surveyed and filed with the county, and we own that 3.1 acres. We do not own the remaining 22 acres. The final point on the appeal was in regards to light, noise, and other pollution. We look forward to the large-scale development process where we will present our plans for design and align them with county requirements. What I can say now is that our facility will have downlights only, we will contain the dumpster in a block structure with gates, and our septic system will be designed and installed based on public health requirements. At the end of the day, I'm asking the county, the JPs, and the local residents to put some faith in my wife and I. Our goal is to have a nice-looking facility to attract the best small businesses and startup companies needing those spaces. We feel that with the eastward expansion of the city of Springdale, this is an ideal location being right off of the major east-west thoroughfare in our county. We plan to be more than a landlord by partnering with the community and schools and providing our tenants more than just a space, but rather a network of small business owners to learn from and rely on. We know that these small businesses will be much-needed resources in the local community. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to address any questions that the court may have at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Jesse. It's Jesse, right? I just want to make sure my pronunciation's right. Is there anybody else that wants to speak, that you have to speak on your behalf?
No.
Okay. With that, we're going to move and we're going to open this up to public comments. And then, stay close. We'll have a time for questions for you
I'll be
in just
here.
a few minutes.
Thank you.
Well, we're going to move to public comments and we'll bring you back. Jot it down.
I'll be back.
Okay. I want to give everybody the chance to flesh all this out. Justice Wilson.
In the interest of fairness, I wondered if there's any of the visuals that we missed, if he needed to speak to briefly.
Mr. Jesse, would you like to come back up here and maybe just run through the visuals again for Justice Wilson at his request? It looks like we got things unfrozen.
There were a few additional visuals. Really, this one was probably the most important one. And what it's supposed to be is a 360-degree rotation from a drone, but it looks like it's just facing one direction right now. If it loads, you will be able to see from the highest point of what would be the highest building, a 360-degree view. That's great. From there, I only wanted to show this to everybody here because I'm sure not everybody has been right out by Sonora Elementary, or maybe all of you have, and just wanted you to see what was close by and what was around. From the video, you can see, obviously, the school across the street, and to the north, you can see Highway 412, you can see the church, and you can see the refrigeration company building as well. Other than that, there weren't any super relevant visuals.
Thank you, Mr. Jesse.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll move into public comments now. If you'll line up there, and if you want to speak to this particular project, if you'll sit and state your name and where you're from, we'll try to get going. We're going to limit to 3 minutes per person unless you're speaking for a group, and we'll give you additional time if you represent a group. Any public comments on this particular project?
This isn't the appeal part, right? This is just public comment of the event.
If you're speaking to this appeal, you need to have public comments right now.
Yes, sir. We're going to speak as a group.
You're going to have to sit down and take turns on the microphone.
I'm sorry we don't have a drone that can show you a movie.
If you can get me up, going. Thank you, sir. You can stay up here. That's fine.
No.
You can stay up here. It's all good. You get me up though. I'm Gary Miller, 20115 Santa Rosa Drive. From my backyard, I have a clear shot, and I can see the school and the white fence that goes around that property. I think the drone was at the far west edge of their property, and that's probably why it's sheltered there, but there's been a lot of trees and things taken out. But anyway, I'm gonna jump into my presentation. One thing we noticed that was kind of strange, it looks like it's been cleared up here at the beginning, but the notification letter that was sent out to us stated that the planning board denied the decision from the CUP. So thank you for clearing that up so I can proceed then. But that does cause some confusion in the community when this is the letters that we get out. I would like to point out that as per the CUP application, the burden of proof is on the applicant to demonstrate why this is appropriate. Please keep this in mind as we go through our presentation. I wished I could spend the full 30 minutes discussing how this project is not compatible with the surrounding area, but unfortunately I must go over major issues with the application. Please give me your undivided attention as I need to go through this relatively quickly to try to keep within the time restraints. This was this was mailed out from the planning department. Note the absence of the applicant's name. At the planning board meeting, we were assured this was because it takes time for the assessor's office to post deed changes. As it turns out, our suspicions were correct. The Jessies do not own this property. Up until a few weeks ago, January 23rd, to be exact, it was owned by the Philip Myers Holdings LLC. On the 24th of January, a parcel number was created for the new owner, Mountainside Properties LLC. The picture on the right is from the assessor's office, showing the warranty deed change and the new owner. So why is this important? The Jessies perjured themselves on September 8th, 2022, when they filled out this application. They certified that they are the sole owners of the property, but they are not. It was owned by Philip Myers Holdings LLC. This alone should cause this project to be denied. How do we proceed when the application doesn't have the proper parties listed? Is it appropriate for the planning office and this quorum court to support perjured documents? It's examples like these that cause citizens in this community to lose trust in this process and the project. So at this point, I would like to hit the pause button on my presentation and ask Judge Deakins in this court to deny the application because the proper parties are not listed and the applicant perjured themselves.
Mr. Miller, you need to go through your presentation. I have no voter authority over this body. This is up to the justices. But this is not going to be a give or take. You just need to go through your presentation, okay?
Okay, thank you, sir. Moving on. To be clear, this is a business park. This proposal will change the use from single-family residence and agricultural to 24 businesses. 225 square foot of office space is a large area. To put it in perspective, the average cubicle is 36 square feet. The office shop space, and bathroom is all climate controlled. It's not simply a storage unit or a warehouse for business. It is their place of businesses. As we dive into this application, you'll see the applicant is asking for an unconditional use of this property. They are asking for approval to run 24 hours, 7 days a week, unlimited number of employees, and allow retail business. They wrote their own traffic statement and conveniently failed to mention the school across the street. All right, 2 schools, there's 2 of them. They didn't spend the money to have a traffic study completed. In my research, I have found other CUPs included a traffic study completed and signed by a licensed engineering firm. This is not something new or unreasonable to expect with a project like this. It's even listed in the checklist on the planning department's website. How does this project not warrant a traffic study? There is a history of crashes at this intersection. There are schools and subdivisions that use this county road that contains no shoulder. There are documented concerns from the Springdale Public School District and from the Nob Hill Fire Department. This is also the only county-owned spotlight, and it has known issues. So I ask, if this project doesn't require a traffic study, as indicated on the application checklist, what project does? Here's a copy of the traffic statement created by the applicant. I just wanted to highlight how no consideration has been given to the impact of traffic and related safety. This is simply checking boxes and nobody actually looking at the content. If I haven't convinced you that we are box checking instead of fact checking, let's look at the number of parking spaces in the traffic statement versus the concept drawing. It states the parking lot will contain 68 parking spaces to accommodate maximum expected traffic. You've also seen where the application lists 1 to 3 employees per unit. Well, 24 units times 3 employees equals 72, so that doesn't match up. Why is this important? When the initial tech review was sent out, the roads, fire department, schools, and so forth didn't have the right information to review. The road department did look at the concept drawing and counted the parking spaces. The fire department did have questions on the turning radius, and that would be exasperated with an accurate concept drawing. So how are folks supposed to do an initial tech review when the concept drawing doesn't reflect reality? Move forward. So this is the concept drawing from their engineering firm showing the 32 parking spaces. Having the wrong address also makes it tough to do a tech review. Looking at the picture on the left, note the west side zip code and address. That's because Philip Myers LLC address is listed for the location. It confused the Nob Hill Fire Department. They wouldn't have known that this was in their district if it wasn't for me bringing it up. I wonder who else missed the first opportunity. What's even more amazing is the address on today's agenda is still wrong. See the picture on the right? The address listed is for Jason Lipsmeyer of Philip Myers Holding LLC. His name is not listed anywhere on this application. How do all these inconsistencies build trust within the Sonora community? There are only 5 questions on the application related to compatibility. I'm going to go over questions 2 through 4. You will hear from my neighbor on the first one. In short, this is stating that public health, safety, and general welfare are completely dependent upon a manager. It does go on to state that the project will use video surveillance for the benefit of the tenant and their properties, but the manager is there to protect the public. How does that happen when there's 0 employees? This question is related to properties in the immediate vicinity, not from other districts or cities. The neighborhoods in the immediate vicinity have covenances that do not allow businesses to be ran from homes. Thus, this statement is not relevant to the question. Then we see the carefully worded "we predict" for operating hours, making it flexible and unenforceable. It also notes there are no residencies within approximately 750 feet of the property. Note the red rectangle in the lower left is within 750 feet, and the yellow is within 300 feet. If the 700-foot buffer that the applicant quoted is of significance, then we have a big problem. There are several $500,000 plus brick homes being built and finished as we speak. You will get to see one of those later, but for now, let's take a look at the lot that is within 300 feet. This lot sold for $90,000. How is this project going to help this future homeowner and the others in this new neighborhood? How is 24 businesses, no screening, flexible operating hours, customer traffic, and deliveries going to help property owners in the immediate vicinity? These questions haven't been answered. This response has nothing to do with the orderly development of the surrounding area or improvement of the properties uses as permitted. It does reference the center turning lane that is there for pickup and drop-off of the two schools, the same one the school district has wrote a letter of concern. It also references the county-owned stoplight that doesn't work as designed because of the traffic load. Next, it states that this is a relatively small development compared to self-storage unit. This is an apples and oranges comparison that doesn't make any sense. Storage units don't have offices, bathrooms, names printed on the door, and mailboxes. Just more fluff to try to make this application look complete. I pulled this picture from Google Earth. This is the property the applicant cited as an example. The proposal is 4 buildings, each housing 6 units. This photo has 1 building with 5 units. So we're talking about an even bigger size than what's in this picture. Now multiply that by 4 for the number of buildings. I wouldn't call that a small development. Please shift your eyes to the lower right. See how they place temporary signs in the right-of-way and are storing boats and trailers? They are doing retail window tinting and car detailing. This will happen here because the application states that the use may vary. This doesn't have much of a residential feel to it, does it? The applicant has stated there are developers, but they only recently moved to Arkansas. Mountainside Properties LLC was registered 9 months ago to their home address in Fayetteville. I'm not aware of anything that they have developed. They are also claiming to be residents of this community. Although they live in Washington County, they do not live in District 5, and they are not in the Springdale School District. Just as a resident of Lincoln wouldn't consider themselves a resident of Fayetteville, I do not consider a Fayetteville resident to be a member of Sonora or Springdale communities. More fluff that sounds good and yet avoids answering questions on the CUP application. If the intent is to develop an intentional and useful property, then how is it that the use can vary based on individual needs? I haven't been able to locate the Planning Commission's mission statement, but if they are working so closely with them, then why is the wrong address on the mailing, wrong owner on the application, wrong parcel number, wrong number of parking spaces, wrong number of buildings? I could go on, but I think we all get the point. Here's what I meant by wrong number of buildings on the application. Is it 4 buildings or is it 6? How can we have an application get this far along the process with so many errors? The 3.1 acres is full. A reasonable person would conclude they will be back visiting the planning board for another CUP that will extend further into the Philip Myers property. Remember this slide at the beginning of my presentation? Please take the burden off of us citizens and place it back on the applicant who is trying to change the designated use of this property. Now I'm going to turn it over to my neighbor who will discuss how this project is not compatible with the community. Thank you.
I'd like to
Hello,
know
my
if
name's
we're
Bobby
50
Huffines.
Just before you start, we're 15 minutes in to the 30-minute period, just for reference.
My name's Bobby Huffines. I live at 20039 Santa Rosa Drive. The Jessies state that this project is compatible with single-family residents and 2 Springdale schools directly across the street. Commercial property is not compatible adjacent to schools or to single-family residents. Blake Chapman reports that the project slightly deviates from adjacent land uses. This is a major deviation. Adjacent uses are single-family residence, agriculture, and public schools. I want to point out that the adjacent statement that Mr. Chapman reports indicates that there is commercial and religious. I've got the red arrows adjacent to this property, and they're not obviously adjacent. Let's look at the photograph. Looking at the photo map, the project is in dark blue with the red arrow pointing to it. Adjacent properties include 2 public schools directly across the street to the west. Sonora Baptist Church is on the north side of Highway 412 with the green arrow pointing to it, but is not adjacent to the project. The Dollar General store is also on the north side of Highway 412 with an orange arrow pointing to it, and it's not adjacent to the project. This project is being placed in the middle of single-family residential agricultural, including a new subdivision south of the elementary school. Let's take a cruise down the road, starting on the west of the left-hand side of the photo. We'll start with the self-storage located on the north side of Highway 412, an eyesore. RV and boat storage is next. No construction yet. Y'all approved the CPU, but they haven't funded it and started construction. Auto sales lot. Ooh, what a mistake. Huge salvage yard located on the north side of Highway 412 that y'all apparently can't do much about because there were no conditions on it. Truck repair located on the south side of Highway 412. Here again, all of these are on 412. Plumbing company east of this photo map, you have to keep going east. It's on the north side of 412. And further east, HVAC is on the south side. Please note that all of these commercial properties are on Highway 412. The subject property that we're talking about is going to be in the middle of these family housing units. I have a petition here signed by 67 residents. That's 100% of the residents on Santa Rosa Drive and 100% of the ones close to it on Sonora Drive. I'll give this to the court if you want to peruse through it. I'm sure you have, I hope that each of you received an invitation to come and view the properties and look at it and walk through how the traffic flow is, and I appreciate it if you did. I also want to take just a minute to show you this picture. This project has 2 driveways, and they're directly across from the school driveways. We're creating a 4-way traffic at each of those intersections when there's school traffic there. We talk about the middle lane being a turn lane. Actually, it's the passing lane for the ones wanting to get into the second driveway when the others are blocked for the people wanting to get in the first driveway. So it's not a middle lane that can be used freely by other people. There are no currently existing commercial use areas outside of the Highway 412 corridor in Sonora. Sonora is a small country road which is already congested by the heavy traffic. It floods in the middle of the low point that needs to be corrected and will not support the traffic associated with this project. Please recognize the incompatibility of this project and vote no. Thank you. I'll turn it over to Bill.
Good evening. My name is Bill McCain. I live at 19924 Sonora Road. I live at the next driveway south of this project. We have 2 concerns over the development. One is the traffic situation. We already have major congestion before and after school, so much so that it causes a lot of folks to have to go back the back way around Sonora Road and avoid trying to go through that intersection in the mornings through a small 2-lane windy road back around to Don Tyson just to get back into town. This creates hazards to everyone who needs to use this road or lives on this road in the mornings and afternoons. The afternoons are the worst. There are so many cars trying to get into the school, so many parents that show up early that they bleed out onto the road. Then they end up on the 412 and I don't know if you can see the slide, but they actually start forming a new turn lane on Highway 412, just waiting to turn onto Sonora Road. And that new turn lane is actually the shoulder. It's not a lane. It's caused major congestion on Sonora Road and 412. Cars end up blocking Sonora Road, waiting to pull into the school. They also stack up on the westbound side in the turn lane on the highway, trying to get onto Sonora Road. I've actually tried to go home at that time. There's no way to get through. It's completely blocked, forwards and backwards. You have to go completely around to get back and come in the back way just to get to my house. And I'm the very next one past the school. The slide of a news article of a fatal accident in front of the elementary school. A father was killed after taking his daughter to the middle school, and a mother was seriously injured after dropping her children off. I'm trying to hurry because I know we're running out of time. At some point, emergency vehicles will need to get through and won't be able to. And I believe the Springdale School District has also sent emails, if not more than one, concerned with what they say is an already highly congested area. The Springdale School District responded to the Planning Department notice of the CUP requesting additional safety measures be in place before any additional traffic is added to this already congested area. We ask that a traffic study for solutions to the already existing traffic problem be explored before granting this permit. This area is growing in population with lot splits for new homes, new subdivisions, and as it is now, the traffic will only get worse without adding upwards of 125 more vehicles per day directly across the street from the school. There are over 1,300 students attending the two schools. Some are bus riders, some are car riders, but they all funnel into or out of the school on Sonora Road. This doesn't even include teachers, faculty, deliveries, and other employees of the school. Second issue of the type of project. I don't think anyone is totally opposed to growth, but we need the type of growth that fits the area. All of the commercial businesses that they referred to are on 412, not Sonora Road, not on Santa Rosa, and not on any of the side roads coming off of 412. This type of project is more suited for Highway 412 frontage, and there's plenty of land available for this type of business. There's also a concern for the precedents it sets for the future in this area. This is a farmland, neighborhood, agricultural area, and based on the car lot and salvage yard and what it has turned out to be, we all have concerns over what this project will really turn out like. Who's going to police the project and ensure that it's done exactly as the pictures, plans, and the application states, and not turn into another salvage yard? Thank you.
My name is Eric Coleman. I live at 19667 Sonora Road. Live about 3/4 of a mile south of the school. I'm going to shorten up kind of what I'm going to say here, because I think we're kind of going over time. It's obvious that we're all not happy with the salvage yard and the storage buildings because of what it's done to the area. And when we look at our area, the Sonora area, when you look at property values just as they are, just half a mile over Fayetteville, you just have that imaginary line there. Property value is on average $10 to $20 per square foot more per house, just because of that Fayetteville zip code. You move to Springdale, and it goes down. When we see projects like this that have happened, the salvage yard, the storage facility, new concrete business, it's not something that the average person really likes to see on a daily basis, especially if you live in an area. So that doesn't really help us with property values. And none of us here, I don't think, are against growth. We know we're in an area, probably the 10th most popular area in the country to live. So we know growth is going to happen. We're not against growth. We would just like to see growth that's going to be compatible with the area. If this was a subdivision, we see just south of the school, there's a subdivision going in right now. And of those, these houses are going to be valued at approximately $500,000 and above. If this land was proposed, if it was a subdivision, then you think about the tax revenue. The property tax revenue from their project will be great. It'll be good. But if you were to put approximately 20 to 25 houses on this land, because we know that the 3 acres proposed will continue to get larger, the value of these will be approximately $12.5 million for property taxes. And of those will be people that will live in the area. They'll have 2 to 3 people living in the house, a couple of cars that will be property taxes. They'll live in the area and support the area. And this will be an area that people would like to go to. You want to go see a nice school. We look at the school, we look at the subdivision. It's comforting, it feels good, a place that you want to be. And as I stated, I live about 3/4 of a mile south of the school. I have 2 kids. I've got a 5-year-old and a 9-year-old. My 9-year-old's in 3rd grade at school, rides the school bus. And as we're all aware of, we've had a shortage of school bus drivers. So, you know, where the bus drops off is having to be consolidated to certain areas. If this project is approved, we're gonna have, 24 businesses coming and going. And most of the time, people go to work between 7:30 and 8 when the school is being there. So people are gonna do, like the ones that live there, we know how to navigate the area. You have Sherry Road as a bypass, you can go up Nels Bluff or around Haberton to get to our houses. Well, as you live there, you kind of respect, or you try to. But Sonora Road is a speedway. You gotta come hang out in my driveway sometime. People go routinely 80, 90 miles an hour up and down that road. Last year, my wife and kid were out waiting for the school bus. He pulls up, he stops, puts everything out, he takes 2 steps in the road, and the guy blows by the bus about 60 miles an hour. And that happened for real, and that was a local person. So now if you start putting businesses, and these guys are all late for work, bypassing 412, this road is gonna continue to get loaded up with people who are more concerned about getting to work. Because we know we're all busy, every single one of us is busy, and no one is slowing down. So this is gonna continue to be a problem with Sherry Road and with Sonora Road. So just for the safety aspect of that road, and then also is brought out, with it being across from the school, that they have to pull right out where the school is. So delivery drivers don't take into consideration where schools are. When they make deliveries, they get on the road. So if we start getting bob trucks and semi trucks, and because if it's plumbers and electricians, there's gonna be semis unloading, product for these people, for these businesses. So it's gonna be hard to get in, hard to get out. They're probably gonna have to stop on the road. So if we get semis lined up at, 7 in the morning, 8 in the morning, it's not gonna happen every day, but it will happen. And then you got buses, and like I said, everyone's busy. People get tempers flaring that line. You'll see people cutting people off. And so this is gonna continue to make it worse.
We have 2 minutes left.
Okay, even if this project was with 412 access, it wouldn't be probably as concerning. Still, we would be concerned, but with that being right there across from the school. And then I just think just future, like was brought out, if that was housing, it's a nice area. But you put businesses there, it just becomes another business park in an area that people, maybe it's not gonna be a desirable area. And then also water is an issue. I've met with multiple people. Jane Vigneault, she's the county extension agent of the state water education at the U of A, and also with Daniel Haygood of the Beaver Watershed Alliance, and they have all come out and looked at not only their project. Yes.
In the back, are you waiting on public comments, sir?
I'm coming from a different angle. I wish to have a few minutes to.
Okay, we
They-
need to,
okay,
you need to, you guys need
I'll
to,
finish.
we need to
I'll stop.
accommodate
So,
everyone if you can.
we've met with these, different ones who are concerned about projects being, not only, taking in consideration the project being built for detention, but also the land around it. Because if they're here, there's also water here that comes in. Where does that go? How is that
Yeah,
accounted for?
thank you. We're well over time. Sir, would you like to? No, sir. We need to accommodate this gentleman in the back. Sir, would you like to have some public comments?
Could I borrow your?
Yes. Yes, you can. Should be right here.
My name is Hưng Duong, and I live in at 19979 Santa Rosa, and I am a little pro development, so I wish you give me a few minutes to show my point of view regarding this project. I will have.
Sir, just a second. I just noticed, are you talking about the storage unit facility?
I'm
Molly
talking
Wagnon.
about this storage solution, CUP. No. No, he's talking about shop. No, I'm talking about this very same project.
Okay, just a second. I will pose to the justices too. We have 20 seconds left, so if we would like to accommodate this gentleman, we're going to have to probably have a motion. Just a second. Justice Lyons?
I make a motion to extend the time for citizen comment.
How much time? We need a specific time.
We give each individual what?
3 minutes.
Yeah, so we have one left, right? So it's
Okay.
3 minutes.
I have a motion to extend public comment time by 3 minutes by Justice Lyons. Second by Justice Dean. All those in favor? Those opposed? We're going to extend public comments by 3 minutes.
I am interested in proposing a win-win-win solution to everybody, for the developer, for the community, as well as for the county. And for that, I think we need to take all these items into consideration. And for the interest of time, I'm not going to cover every one of those items, but only number 3, which Eric, prior to me, have already talked about. If we're looking at Sonora as a community, we can easily add another 1,000 property, new development. And if you're talking about property value, if each one of those is 100,000 less than what it could be, you're looking at a tax base of $100 million that the county would be able to draw tax from. And you will lose that tax base for good, for life. It's not one time. Okay, but if we decided, would you back to the third slide, please? Third slide. If we decided, let's just build, and what we have experienced from other project is you're looking at the one of the business that I call, is it a salvage yard or is it an auto lot? You're looking at that, those picture, I took those picture, and that is a business right across the city, right across the school on Highway 412. And it's stretched a few hundred feet, taking the Highway 412 frontage. And I can't tell if that's a salvage yard or it's an auto lot. And each one of those type business has a different kind of regulation. If it's an auto lot, for the number of auto they have on the lot, you gotta have insurance liability for every one of those vehicles. But if it's a salvage yard, then what if one of the vehicle inside the salvage yard got fire? Can a fire truck get to that vehicle and put out a fire? So it's a hazard that would happen anytime. And then the other next please. The other business that is also on 412 facing
Just a second, sir. And for the record, I didn't catch your name or where you live. Can you state that for the record?
My name is Hung Duong, and I live on Santa Rosa, 19979 Santa Rosa.
Thank you, sir. The time has expired. Your 3 minutes has expired.
Well, could I get to the last slide?
That'll be up to the pleasure of the court, to the justices. I have a motion to extend public comment time, to suspend the rules and extend public comment time for 2 minutes by Justice Ecke, a second by Justice Pond. All those in favor? Those opposed? You have 2 minutes, sir.
Thank you. So this slide right here shows the traffic, the school traffic that on Santa Rosa and Highway 412 intersection. As you can see, the traffic for parent to go pick up student start from Santa Rosa south, extend all the way to the intersection and wrap around Highway 412. And the cars has to be on Highway 412 east shoulder for that length of time. And my timing for that period is about an hour when the bus starts to show up and until the bus is leaving. So that is the current situation. Next, please. So if we allow the storage solution to proceed, what keep the storage solution from not becoming what I call co-working space? And co-working space, if you Google it today, they are very popular in our area, in the Northwest Arkansas area. Previous slide, please. That is where people develop office that they will rent out space like this table right here or even smaller. So each one of these units proposed would be able to have, of the 3 acres, my calculation would make 3,000 units of these co-working space. And the phase 2 would allow them to have 24,000 plus co-working space. That's a space, not renters, because it's co-working. Each one of those spaces could have more than one occupant.
Okay, thank you, sir. Your time's
Thank you.
expired.
Thank you.
With that, we'll move on to discussion. I'd like to do this in 3 phases. First, does anybody have questions or discussion items for our planning team? Justice Coger.
If it's permissible, I'd like to hear what the planning team, what the recommendation, I mean, did they find it compatible?
Mr. Chapman, would you like to speak to that?
Thank you. We're not really addressing, from the planning department perspective, whether or not it's, we're presenting what's there, and we're leaving it to the discretion of the planning board and also the quorum court. We didn't see anything that was necessarily huge as far as, for example, heavy industrial next to residential. It seems to be a buffering use.
Mr. Chapman, will you remind me, I think I heard earlier, it was the November planning board meeting, this project was approved 4-1, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I just wanted to read. I think I heard somebody have that question. Justice Coger, do you have any follow-ups there?
No, not really.
Does anybody have any questions for our planning team? Justice Ecke?
I don't have questions for the planning team, but could you clarify, Sonora is unincorporated, but it's a Springdale school, therefore the roads 412 is county road.
412 is state highway.
Or state highway, I'm sorry, state. Okay.
412 is okay, US highway. And then Sonora Road, the north and south road,
Okay.
is a county road.
Okay. So as far as speeders, who monitors?
Well,
County roads like goes like to the, if you have like any issues on a county road, like it goes to the sheriff's department. Yeah, Sam out from the planning office. Anything that like has any violation like on the road goes to the sheriff's office if you have any issue with it. Anything that's like on a state highway goes to the state like highway department. Yeah, so and like when we presented this during the tech review, the road department did not have like any major issues with this project. The only thing they suggested is like the entrances, and instead of 1, make it 2. and each one of them like maximum width of like 60 foot. And I guess like that was in the condition as well. And we based our like conditions based on like the technical reviews and the feedback we get back from the stakeholders. In addition to the drainage statement and like traffic statement, normally like we ask for statements, and as we said, like, or if there is anything that like is required or needed, and it based on, we based all of these requirements and like we ask for it when we get the tech review. The engineering recommends like we need to have like an extensive like study for like traffic or extensive study for drainage, and they deferred all of this for the like large scale section of this. This is only for the conditional use permit. So if they got like the conditional use permit, they can move on with the large scale. If they did not, so that's it, like there is no large scale basically. So all the discussion was based on if we get approval, we can move on with the larger scale projects and plans, site plans, and we can improve on everything. And that's all like happened like during the tech review. And if there is any question about like why we have like discrepancies like in the address and the names, when it was applied for, it was like under like one parcel number, and that's like for future like reference as well. We get like an applications for like a parcel number for instance, and we stick with this according to our ordinances. That's why like we need to find the people like based or the neighbors based on this parcel number. When they applied, it was like the full 25 acres parcel. During the process, they already applied, surveyed, and applied to split the land, but this didn't happen before the planning board, so we couldn't plug it in. And that's why we just like used that size. And the name and the address and everything we pulled from the assessor's office database. So if it like anything happens when we send the neighbor notifications, changes after that, we can't change it. We'll stick with it. When we do the appeal, our ordinance says like we have to notify the same number of people and the neighbors. Instead of like the first time we send them in like certified, the next time we send them like regular mail, but we have to keep the same number of like neighbors and the same number of like 300 feet from the same like parcel number. Even if it shrinks, we can't change it because that's what's written. So that's why it's always like, that's the discrepancy, is like because it's changed during and we could not change it. So.
Just to clarify, so.
Just a second, Justice Taylor. Justice Secchi, do you have any follow-up there?
Just a comment as far as the objection on speeders. I don't care where you are. I mean, we're on Turner Road, 30 miles an hour, and we have people top speeds 84 miles an hour. Justice Anderson, where he lives, that is an issue. We've gone to the city and we've organized as a community to talk about, you can't control that. As to 412 and the line going to the schools, J.O. Kelly, has a line all the way down 412, ready to go in to pick up their children. Haverton Road on Turnbow, same thing. You turn and you've got traffic going both ways. But you know what? Everybody's respectful. One goes one, then the other one goes, then one goes, then the other goes. That's part about being a community. You can't control people's speed, no matter how hard you try to monitor it. So, that's all.
Thank you,
Just
Justice
a comment.
Secchi. Justice Taylor?
Yes, point of clarification on the notice. The 3-acre parcel, by definition, in its size, would have fewer people notified than the 25-acre parcel
Yes,
would,
sir.
correct?
Yes, sir. It will be like, the ordinance says like 300 feet from the property like line. And if it was like smaller, like it would be like less like neighbors. But also like the ordinance says like any member of the public can come and object or like attend meetings, so it doesn't basically like it has too much weight.
Justice Coger?
Judge, I need some clarification. I want to ask a question about the septic. Is that something for the planning commission, or would that be the developer?
Do you gentlemen have any comments on that at this time?
On the septic, because I heard, if I heard it correctly, there's going to be 4 9,000 square foot buildings. Is that correct?
Correct.
okay? And they're each gonna have a 6 apartments or 6 units?
6 units, 24 in total.
Okay, so I mean, is this site, in your opinion, what about the septic? Will it perk, or, I mean, is that gonna be a problem?
I am not a civil engineer.
Well, who-
I have to defer to people with PE letters next to their name.
You did 3 septic, like,
But-
pools, yeah? Yeah.
But there has been perk work done.
Yeah, they did like 3 pits, and like they all perked, and like they provided all the information. If it's needed, we have it.
Mr. Addo, you probably need to pull that mic over. We need to consider, we don't, not just in this room, but
Yep.
online we
Only
have.
an Omni mic. So like they did like 3 pits, and the 3 of them perked, and we do have like the perk test like results if they're needed. Yeah, the 3 of them perked.
But there's commentary there too, though the septic system is something that'll be covered more in depth in LSD.
Yes, sir.
So don't worry about that.
I'm not saying, hey, listen, this is your consideration. I'm just saying that
Well, I mean,
that design and inspection will come in a second step, large-scale
I
development.
mean, but there's a pond right behind the property, right where the boundary line is going to be. And so I would think, well, and also just for, I think the septic is a big issue, so that's why I was asking that. Thank you.
Right. The septic will, if I recall right, be situated due south of the development. We know that the land perks, but what we don't know is there an engineered design solution that will meet the capacity, which is why there's an upper limit on the number of units. If it can't support the number of personnel on site, the density would go down.
All of which will be handled in
Yeah.
All in
LSD.
LSD.
Yes, and also like from like engineering perspective, like from like what I've seen like in multiple like tech review attendance, there is always a coefficient the engineers uses, and it changes based on the changes of the impervious surface. So if it's like gravel stays gravel, like they have like a coefficient. If you change like to like paved, they change the coefficient, like raise it, and they base like their like septic tank design or like a pond or retention pond based on those coefficients. So it all comes like into the next step.
Gotcha. Are you good, Justice Leonard? Any more questions for our planning team? Any discussion items for our planning team? If not, I'm gonna bring up the applicant after this. Justice Dennis?
Well, you said discussion, and so thank you first, Judge, for hearing me. I'm willing to vote tonight for 1 reading, but I'm gonna table or fight it for more than 1 reading because there's too many scribbers. I think that's called what it's called, scribbers. There's too many
Scriveners,
errors.
yeah, okay.
There's too many errors. I like to go to the site and see it, and I went to 2254 Wildcat Creek Boulevard. And so if y'all don't get where you want there, 2254 looks pretty
We'll
good.
email you the correct
So
address.
That's my fault entirely.
so I spent the afternoon looking at other people's property, and they came out and wanted to know what I was doing, I think.
They know who you are, so it's fine.
So anyway, my point is, I'll vote 1 time tonight, but I won't vote more than that.
Thank
And
you.
I'll even table if it comes up for a second vote.
Thank you, Justice Dennis. Any more questions for our planning team? All right, do we have questions for the applicant? Justice Lyons?
Yeah,
I think we're done with you gentlemen, and
We
we'll
apologize for the typos.
we'll bring Mr. Jesse back up and put you on the hot seat, Mr. Jesse.
So during your earlier, you made a statement about the septic tank. Can you talk to that so that we have a clear view of where you're going with septic tank, where you're at, and is that engineering done, or what that is to answer those questions?
Sure. So on the septic, again, that is part of the LSD discovery process. We have a civil engineer and a septic engineer working on that right now. It is a bit of a game of Tetris at times, trying to figure out, based on the size of the lot, how much room do we need for the leach field? And so as of today, we have a plan that allows the appropriate amount of space for the leach field and the tanks, but we don't have a final design yet submitted to public health because that's not yet part of this process.
That's good, thank you.
Okay. Justice Lemming?
I've been wanting to ask this question. Thank you, Judge. we talk about 4 buildings. I'd like to know the square footage of 3 acres, and then the square footage of buildings, and the square footage of asphalt, and the square footage of ponds. How in the world are there gonna be any room left for a septic system? That's amazing to me on 3 acres.
It is tight.
It will be very tight.
Yeah,
And
it
if
is
it don't perk good, it's not gonna drain. It's gonna drain all right, be over in the school parking lot or out in the curb and gutter and wherever it goes. We've had issues with septics across Washington County, and we've had several development deals that's happened that's went sour. But the septic would be, that's gonna be a tough one.
We do feel fortunate, based on the PERC test results, and again, I'm not a septic engineer, but it's in an ideal range, and so the septic engineer feels good about that.
Justice Coger?
Thank you, Judge. Mr. Jesse, where will the retaining pond be located?
The retaining pond will be located in the southeast corner of the property.
Okay, southeast. Okay. And what is the size of the retaining pond?
Well, again, that's part of the game of Tetris that we're playing, trying to make sure that we have plenty of room for the leach field and having enough space based on the requirements of the state, and still having the detention pond deep enough based on the stormwater report. So I don't have a final answer on that yet, but it's something that we're working on.
Okay. And with regard to the septic system again, is it true that you can't have parking spots that run over the lines of the septic, where the septic will be?
That's correct.
Okay. So is that going to cut back possibly on the parking?
It's already built into the plan.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? Justice Taylor?
Mr. Jesse, there was talk about property values, and you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but just ballpark, will you have more than $500,000 invested in your project if it gets built? Total?
Will I have more than that? Yeah.
Yeah, a lot more, right?
A lot more.
A lot more, okay.
Any other questions for the applicant?
This wasn't a direct question to me, but if I'm allowed to address JP Dennis's question, just about some inaccuracies. We really did everything that we could to keep the planning department updated. As you all, I am sure know, being in these seats, it is a work in progress. And so any small thing that was changed here or there, we have kept the planning department updated from day one. But once the application is submitted, as you know, the information that's on there on day one has to stay on there through this process. And that's why it isn't reflected in the application.
You can discuss with Mr. Jesse if you want to. Cue up your mic.
Oh, thank you. No, it's even just the one era. I mean, understand, I like to go out and I look at these CUPs.
Sure.
And I make my decision a lot of times standing out there. And it's the wrong location.
Right.
You know, I went out by where I went was out by the waste management, just past it. That's why I say it's a good location if you don't make it out there. But, you know, there was too many things that need to be corrected and then brought back for a second and third reading. So I'm not against you or for you. I'm just saying I want to be clear on it and have all this stuff taken care of. It should be answered correctly, and then we'll go from there. So it's all right to go with reading number 1, but I'll stop it on number 2. Thank you.
Questions for the applicant? Justice Lyons?
Actually, I want to go back to the planning on that whole address thing, because I understood that it's the planning board that put that on based on the assessor's database, and it wasn't the applicant that applied that. Maybe I'm wrong.
I did not write that address on my application.
I get your point. I'm just where it comes from. No, I get the point. And then I don't know that's going to change, because what I heard earlier was once it's on there, they can't change anything to the process. So I'm not disagreeing with you. I just want to make sure we all have an understanding of that.
Questions for the applicant? Okay, I think we're wrapped up, Mr. Jesse.
Thank you all.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, now we need to take action on this particular matter. If you look on items 11, we have an 11.1, an ordinance to deny a conditional use permit recommended for approval by the zoning board. 11.2 is an ordinance to ratify the conditional use permit provided by the planning board. Justice Lyons.
Thank you, Judge. Yeah, I think, a lot of things we've heard. One of the things that's high in my consideration is where do we want to expand in Washington County for commercial business? And I think somewhere along Highway 412 or that type of corridor is the right place to expand. Now, I do agree and I do understand we as a county need to go in and look at that and look at what we need to do for some areas. Unfortunately, I don't think it's the applicant's responsibility, that road, et cetera. That's our responsibility. And I think we need to take that up with our roads department, which I have started. I want to have those discussions and figure out what that means, not only there, but across the entire county where we think we want to expand. We need to get in front of that a little bit. So, because we're going to have the growth, we're going to continue. So given that, my belief that that's really where it should be, I would move that we ratify the CUP based on the planning board approval.
With that, Counselor Lester, would you like to read that ordinance by title only? Does that have a second? I have a motion by Justice Lyons, a second by Justice Taylor.
An ordinance ratifying a conditional use permit recommended for approval by the Zoning Board of Adjustments.
Now, that's on its first reading. We would need a motion to suspend the rules and move the second reading.
I don't want to suspend the rules, no. Let's let it go through the process.
So we're ready to move on? Justice Coger?
I'm kind of confused. When do we get, I wanted to have a discussion. Like, for instance, I'd like to hear we heard about a letter from the school. I'd like to know what that letter from the school said.
Well, I think that's what we were doing for the last hour.
Well, I'm sorry, I missed that. Are you saying I missed my opportunity to hear what the school had to say?
Yes, unless you have a motion on this, you will have additional time to talk about this next month, I believe. Hey, Justice Lyons, are you good?
I'm good.
Okay. Okay. Next item on our agenda is an appeal hearing discussion for the Wagnon CUP. I would like to do this like we just did the other one, so if we can, we'll start with our planning department. Mr. Chapman?
Yes, sir.
This will move to the second reading next month. Next quorum court meeting. There's not a vote on the first reading. Mr. Chapman?
Thank you kindly. A conditional use permit is sought for the Wagnon self-storage facility proposed on Wagnon on 6.57 acres. Proposes a 14 warehouse self-storage facility along with a 25 by 25 foot management office. Buildings range from 6,000 square feet in size to 1,300 square feet in size. In addition, a 36,000 square foot retention pond is proposed to the east of the property and should provide fire suppression capability. The facility will be gate controlled and operate during regular business hours 7 days a week, 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. Sunday, 7 days a week. Screening is to be provided around the perimeter, and the applicant estimates up to 12 trips per day, based on estimates from their existing facility in Fayetteville. Visible on the next slide is proposed screening. The neighboring uses consist of residential, agricultural, with a spattering of industrial and commercial as you approach East Huntsville, along with a self-storage facility to the north. To date, there have been at least 21 neighbors who have contacted our department with concerns about the conditional use permit, the general concerns being road condition, safety, traffic, and it's reasonably narrow, incompatibility with neighboring properties, lighting, decrease in neighboring land value, and general compatibility. The planning conditions that Planning Department recommends are provide screening to mitigate visibility to neighboring properties, and any further expansion or other use not described here must come before the Planning Board. The history of this project is it went before the December Planning Board and it failed to come to a vote. It came back to the January Planning Board where it was approved 6-1. And later in January, we received an appeal by Ronald Woodruff. His objections are that the board failed to properly consider environmental issues such as groundwater, surface water, and traffic road hazards. The applicant is here to address any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Chapman. And with that, we'll bring up the applicant for their time. You guys you will have 30 minutes to present your project.
Thank you, sir. My name is Nathan Street with McClellan Consulting Engineers, 1580 East Stearns here in Fayetteville. We're requesting a conditional use permit tonight for development on this 10-acre site. The storage unit business is located behind, to the east side of the property, approximately 500 feet away from the roadway, with a small office for business operations. The facility is to be owner-operated with one full-time employee. Hours of operation are from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. each day. The business is contained by a security fence and a coded gate entry, and so no entry is allowed after 8 p.m. or before 6 p.m. The developer does have a similar facility, Eastside Storage, which is located 2.6 miles to the west and generates the 0 to 12 vehicle trips per day. Proposed site lighting will meet or exceed the county lighting requirements and will be dark sky compliant, meaning they'll shine downward and not upward or horizontal. Stormwater detention will also meet or exceed the county's regulations. It's the developer's intent to over-detain any increased runoff in a retention pond that will slowly release the water at or below the pre-developed rates. This strategy will negate any negative impacts to properties downstream. As stated, we're seeking the conditional use permit tonight. The large-scale development where a lot of detail will be hashed out is to follow. The developer, again, is committed to meeting the drainage ordinance. And in addition to the drainage requirements, the developer will permit with Arkansas Department of Environmental Quality and their National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System. That is a requirement for any construction to manage stormwater runoff and erosion control. It's a general permit and stormwater pollution prevention plan that the engineer will complete and submit to DEQ for their approval. And that approval is required before construction. It's the only DEQ permit required for the project because it is not an industrial, petroleum, or mining facility. So again, detailed construction documents and drainage report will be completed at a later date should this project gain your approval tonight. Would you like to add anything?
I think I've got a few.
You're going to have to get real intimate with that microphone.
Okay. Well, I've got a few things that I'd like to add, and I've got a presentation here that we can talk through. I don't necessarily need to touch base on all of it, but there's a few things that I would like for the court to hear. And I've met with quite a few of you folks out at the site and at our current location on Huntsville Road. My wife Jody and I, we built that facility. It's a beautiful facility that fits in Northwest Arkansas, and we serve a lot of the residents around there, and that's what we're just looking to expand. that business. Some of the things that I just want to kind of hit on the high spots of the negative comments that we've heard. One of them being on this is, you know, a lot of traffic and a lot of activity coming in and out of a storage facility. Our current storage facility, we have a electronic gate system that tells us exactly who comes and who goes, at what time they were there, what time that they left, and we can see, you know, go back months at a time and see exactly how many people come through the gate. And the storage industry is relatively peaceful and quiet. You know, we have, like he said, about 0 to 12 people on average coming through the front gate. A lot of that increases to the 12 when you got students coming back from college and they're coming in to move all their stuff out of the storage back in the dorm. Some of the other, this here is a picture of some of the other commercial businesses around Molly Wagnon. You got the White River Nursery. You've got D&D Storage, which is also on Molly Wagnon on the north side of Highway 16. Bear Mountain Automotive is up on top of the mountain on Bear Mountain. Great automotive facility that's kind of hidden back there. We take all of our cars there. We can keep clicking there. Okay. And once we get it going here, I just want to kind of flip through. One of the things was that, you know, the storage complex doesn't belong in residential agriculture, and we believe that it does belong there. We believe that you know, that's exactly where it belongs, is close to our residents and close to our customers, that they can have a place to go to that's convenient to their home to store their products. And we'll kind of flip through these and just show you some pictures of other complexes, all of which are within Washington County and the different cities that it's coming to. This one's East Mission, Highway 45 Tower Storage. You can see the residential agriculture. Double Spring Storage, you got agriculture behind it and residential in front. D&C Storage, this is the one that's also on Molly Wagnon, on the north side of Molly Wagnon, north side of 16. North Salem Self-Storage, Lockdown Self-Storage in Greenland. Prairie Grove Self-Storage in Prairie Grove. A1 in Lincoln, Arkansas. So you can see that all of these, you know, are located in residential and agricultural. I think Nathan covered our light pollution. You know, we'll meet and exceed all the regulations of light pollution for that area. You know, I wanted to touch on this current occupancy rates for self-storages. I've listed 4 of them out here that are close to our facility, and their occupancy rates. They're all within 88 to 96% full. Ours is currently bumping 100% full where we're at today on East Side's self-storage at 96%. And then, you know, also, I put this one out there, the Washington County property tax. We've heard other folks talking about property taxes. Our current location that we built on Huntsville Road in 2015, when we purchased that property, it was agricultural. The property taxes were $7.70 a year on it. Since we've built on it, you know, we've contributed over $32,000 to the Washington County in taxes to, you know, help support the community and roads and all the amenities that, you know, citizens of Washington County enjoy. I think that's it.
Sir, I need you to clarify one thing for me. I forgot to get your name and where
Nathan
you live.
Harris, and I'm the applicant for the Molly Wagnon self-storage.
Thank you, sir. With that, we're going to move on to public comments. You guys hang around. I'm sure we'll have some questions for you.
Thank you.
Once again, we'll limit public comments to 3 minutes per individual. We'll have a total time of 30 minutes. If you will, just come down and state your name and where you live, and we'll get it kicked off.
Hello. Thank you, Judge Deakins and fellow justices. I intend to represent our community today. My name is Cannon McNair. My family and I live at 1999 South Van Hoos Drive. And we've been asked to represent the community tonight in this, in this appeal. I would like to ask, just really quickly for a moment, you saw that we had a lot of people in our community supporting this appeal and being united in this opposition. And I would, if it's okay with the court, I'd like to ask for those people behind me to potentially raise their hand or maybe stand to show some of that support as well. Thank you. Thank you. First, I'd like to be clear on what we're requesting of this court today. Our community is united in our opposition to this conditional use permit, and ultimately, we would like to see this court, permit appealed by the court. Mainly, we do not see how this permit meets the minimum requirements put forward in the process to gain a conditional use permit. We're hopeful tonight for an extension. Without that, I would like to start with 3 reasons for why we were hopeful for that to happen tonight. For one, we would like more time to further consult with environmental protection organizations as to the long-term impacts to this valley, especially in relation to the natural water flows in the EPA-protected waters of the U.S. We have also consulted with and have begun a watershed study of this valley by the Beaver Watershed Alliance, and they need more time to update their data to be consistent with today's natural water flow. Secondly, we'd like more time to consult with organizations like the Department of Agriculture and similar entities, so we can present a more informed case on long-term impacts of permanently removing precious agricultural land. Lastly, there are many people in this room that have been a part of this mountain for generations, and they have preserved their land to be used by generations that follow. We feel it's reasonable to ask for a 30 or 60-day extension relative to the decades of irreparable damage this development would eventually cause. So you just heard 3 valuable reasons why we're requesting an extension, and frankly, we just need more time to inform ourselves on the process so we can adequately and appropriately request this court to appeal this project. That said, collectively, this community has put in a major effort to both understand this process and prepare ourselves for these engagements. We have not sat idle. Let's talk specifically about the conditional use permit in this zoning ordinance and the criteria for the allowance of conditional uses. To do that, let's start with this question on the application. Describe how the conditional use will not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity for the purposes already permitted, nor diminish and impair property values within the neighborhood. To which the applicant simply answered, this development will blend in with the surrounding properties. Let me describe to you the surrounding properties. The neighboring landowners are demonstrating the exact intended purpose of the zoning ordinance. They have agricultural farmland, and they live on premises. There is cattle grazing at the fence line that we're talking about. The water flows naturally. There are many trees, beautiful pastures, and rolling hills of native grasslands. It's not feasible to expect that a storage unit facility could, quote, blend in with the surrounding properties. Therefore, it would be injurious to the use and enjoyment of the property owners in the immediate vicinity. And the property values in this neighborhood are directly linked to the natural setting that is inherent to purposes already permitted in this zone. This will impair and diminish property values and enjoyment. The response by the applicant in the application simply does not meet the minimum requirements. I'll also add, the applicant tonight suggested that it does fit well in that space. But I can guarantee you this neighborhood is not the target market. Farmers, agriculture, homesteaders, people who live on acreage and who live on this land do not require storage units. I have asked them. We have discussed that. We build barns, we build shops. We take care of ourselves. That's how we operate on this kind of land. Let's move on to another question. Describe how the proposed conditional use in all other respects will conform to the applicable regulations of the zone in which it is proposed to be located. Members of our community have done extensive research on these regulations, which has uncovered, for example, a resource provided by the Environmental Protection Agency given to us by another civil engineer. That indicates that both the east and west sides of the applicant's property in question drain into what is known as waters of the United States. Such designated waters are protected and regulated by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Corps regulations state, in part, that any builder may need to apply for a Section 404 permit with the Corps if their project fill impacts a wetland area that is connected to the waters of the U.S. stream, which in fact it does. To date, we have not seen any information from the applicant regarding compliance with Corps regulations or even an inquiry as to said regulations. And that is just one example. As the stewards of this land, the people who have raised generations in this valley, we feel it is our duty to protect these waters, maintain natural water flow, and ultimately voice our opinion when we feel a project such as this could permanently damage the intended purpose of the land. We would like to note that the burden of proof is part of the applicant's job to demonstrate. And again, the applicant has failed to meet that burden and therefore has not met the minimum requirements for a conditional use permit. Let's talk about the precedent this decision would make on agricultural land in our area. There is no doubt about it. This development would cause long-term, irreparable damage to this valley. It would forever remove the agricultural ability of this land and have lasting impacts to the land surrounding it, the land downstream, and its natural water flow. The diversion of water, especially in an established agricultural area at the base of a mountain, is vital to the health and well-being of both the livestock and the humans that care for them. This development could completely alter the water flow that fills ponds used for watering livestock, which is one of the core reasons why commercial developments, especially large ones, are not permitted in agricultural areas. We'd also like to note, at the last planning meeting, the applicant stated, and I paraphrase, "The people who talked about water flow are mostly from the top of the mountain, and our project would be the one dealing with most of the water anyhow." We find that statement to be both factually incorrect and misleading at best, and we'd like to make sure the facts are on the record. The adjoining neighbors to the property in question, who spoke at that meeting and are here today, are concerned about the downstream effects on water flow. This property is near the base of the mountain, but an entire agricultural and residential ecosystem exists downstream of this property, as we have talked about today. Let's also talk about the precedent this permit sets on infrastructure readiness. This is simply not an appropriate location for large-scale commercial development. This development would be placed in an area with inadequate infrastructure, leading to conditions that could endanger the welfare and safety of people and property. Specifically, roadway safety and access is completely inadequate at this location. Let me describe it for you. When entering Wagnon from Highway 16, you are entering what is effectively a road the size of a one-way street that has no markings for safety. Two vehicles cannot travel this section at the same time. That section of road lasts for a couple hundred feet, then turns into somewhat wider, but still quite narrow county road without shoulders. The type of traffic a storage unit facility would reasonably expect includes non-professional drivers operating large box trucks and trailers for moving purposes. Again, we feel this development could be detrimental to the safety and welfare of people and property who regularly operate on this roadway, including cyclists and pedestrians on foot. And by allowing this conditional use permit, a dangerous precedent is being set. If you carefully review the record from the two board meetings that were part of this permit, you will see there were very few questions asked by the board and the answers on the application were insufficient at best. We felt the decision was arbitrary, given that the applicant failed to meet the minimum requirements that we've talked about today. And we fear this could also be a demonstration of zone spotting. The last point I'd like to make is on tax revenue generation. According to American Farmland Trust, a summary of several cost of community services studies from 25 states shows that, on average, the median cost per dollar of revenue raised to provide public services to agricultural land is 37 cents. For every dollar of revenue raised for residential and developed land, it costs $1.16. In other words, while the revenue from a commercial development might be appealing, it costs the taxpayer more to provide the public services that are needed. We invite you all to visit this property if you haven't already. And Peter Reagan, Evan House, and Jimmy Sexton, right behind me, the adjoining neighbors, would be happy to give you a tour of their land as well. We feel the decision to forever and irreparably alter agricultural land such as this should at least require a visit to the property. I'll end today by making our request clear. Our community is united in our opposition to this development. and we ask that you overturn the decision of the planning board and deny this conditional use permit. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Public comments?
Good evening. My name is Michael Walling. My address is 4394 East Falcon Drive. And I actually have one of the mini storage units at East Side. It's an excellent facility. It's always well maintained. It actually enhanced the beauty of the area. What was there before didn't look very nice at all. It's helped in the drainage. It's helped in the basic aesthetics of the whole area. It's helped a lot of people I know with a place to put stuff so they don't have to go across town or not have a place to put their things at all. It's right on my way to town every time. And we've heard a number of points of information, you could say, that are the last meeting we had dealt with flooding. There's flooding water that comes through there all the time. Well, this is going to help with that. It's going to make the flooding less prominent downstream. Everything that's happened there, from the homes that are built there, that's all changed the watershed over the years, everything that happens. And I think it would be a good idea for the residents to look at this as an opportunity, and maybe to have the county work on the road, make it a little better, a little nicer, easier to get through. I don't see that it's a detriment to anybody up there. It's building something nice in an area that could use something nice. And it's just because the people there in the direct vicinity have a place to build barns and a place to build sheds, doesn't mean that the people a half mile or 3/4 of a mile or a mile away have the same opportunity. We all know mini storages are everywhere, and they're still not enough. This is a good place for one, I believe. As for all the studies and everything that people want to look at, I think that's just a buy for time, just something to hold everything up. The wetlands are not affected by the building of a mini storage unit in a detrimental way. I think that they would actually help with the water flow and keep flooding from happening downstream. Anyway, I believe it's a good idea, and from being one of the tenants in their complex, they run a really good place. It's nicer than most. Thank
Right
you.
on time. Thank you, sir. Additional public comments? Okay, good.
Good evening. My name is Larry Carr. I've known the Harris family for roughly 12 years. My family and I have used their storage facilities twice in the past. I live at the bottom of Bear Mountain, where this storage facility will be put up. I think it's a fine idea. You guys will take care of all the planning to put the retention ponds in place so that nothing's going to happen with this community. Change is on our doorstep, and we got to get behind it. Like I say, I've done business with the Harris family, from everything from cows to hay to mini storage stuff, and I just think that this is a good idea. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Additional public comments? Okay, good. We'll bring it back to the board. Does any of the justices have any questions for the planning team. Justice Pond?
Yes, sir. There was a fella, with, McClellan Engineering, I believe his name is Nathan Street, is that correct? I have a question for Mr. Street.
Let's, we'll bring you guys up. Can you hold that, Justice Pond? Do you,
Am I out of order?
I'm gonna be very methodical about I'm gonna try to set us a pattern of the way we
Okay.
do this. Does anybody have any questions for our planning team? Justice Simons?
Thank you, Judge. Mr. Atta, if you would. In the December meeting, where the original proposition failed to come to a vote,
Yes.
what was the attendance?
I believe there were like, I honestly can't remember. I guess like there were like four. There were
Four out
members.
of 7 planning members.
Yes, and like Mr. Kelsey at the time, he mentioned that like one vote no will just like kill the whole project, and they moved on with it. So they said like, what do you think? So the applicant says like, we have faith, like let's move on with it, and they could not reach a second for the approval. So it was like approved first, and they couldn't find a second, and then they appealed to the judge, and it came back on the January meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Justice Lyons?
When was the application provided?
I believe it was either like November or October of last year.
So your notifications would have went out when?
Normally it goes like notification, neighbor notification.
The citizen notification of the notification you sent out to the community.
Oh, to the community, yeah, we send them 14 days exactly before like the planning board meeting.
So they met in December, so that would have went out in late November, early December timeframe?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Questions for our planning team? Okay. Questions for the applicant? Justice Pond, you want to cue your mic? I think you had one for the engineer.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I want to compliment you on the work that you've done on this. And I certainly appreciate the comments and the feelings on people on both sides of this. And but I do have a question for you. For you in particular, being in the business that you are, and you've carefully studied this site, and you're aware of the flow or the trickle of the spring water that comes out and runs across this particular place. It's above you. You don't really have any control of that flow, but on site, you're going to have to build a pad that diverts that flow. Could that be landscaped so as that spring water that comes down from that then comes back together below that pad where and I'm going to name some names here, but they're names of people that already made themselves public in the comments, written and voiced. That water from those springs, and I'm doing this because this is zoned agri. It flows across this property in question that you're designing for development, and then flows across a fellow's property by the name of Reagan, and then runs to from there down to a fellow named House. And they are using theirs for agri. I'm not opposed to you putting something in here that's going to be something else, as long as we don't affect the value of the property that's people choose to leave zoned agri. When it's all said and done, as long as that water still flows down to you from those springs, can that be then redirected to where it originally was? So, it's basically what it's doing, it's irrigating Mr. Reagan's property and then going on down to Mr. House's property and, keeps his stock pond full. Can you say from the design that you're putting together there that that will continue? I know you have no control over what the people above you do, where the springs originate. But as long as those springs are flowing down to the pad that you're gonna build, then can it be directed around that pad and then continue on like it always has?
Yes, sir, it can, and that's normal engineering practice to take kind of off-site water and redirect it around a development or an obstruction so that it's not commingled with any of the impervious runoff water. We want to keep those separate.
And I'm satisfied that before I go on, do you think that would be unreasonable? Because this is a conditional use permit. To make that a condition, we have that in writing. That be a condition that will continue to flow as long as it comes down to the property you're.
Yes, sir. I will defer probably to the developer, but I will say that is normal engineering practice, and that would be our intent.
Because the thing about it is, it's zoned agri. And if we change that by conditional use, we still want the other folks that want to remain agri. And like I said, I'd like to have that condition put in there, because this is a conditional use permit. And I fully realize you can do absolutely nothing about the property above you where the springs originated. I have every confidence in the world about everything you're doing, about making sure you're not creating more runoff than nature can take care of.
Yes, sir.
And I would intend to move to ratify if that condition can be added to what's done so far. Well, this probably not the time to do that. You may want other questions and comments from the court.
I think that's where I would like to move, and we can, when we come to the point to make a motion about the ordinance, we can add the.
As long as that condition's in there. And because we won't get a chance to see this again.
Sure.
And whoever else this goes to, state entities may not really care whether it's zoned agri or not. I have no idea what happens after that. But thank you.
Thank you, Justice Pond. Justice Dennis?
Thank you, Judge. I can't help but bring this point up too. Not only will you get the natural spring water running, you're going to have a tremendous amount of water runoff of those buildings. I've seen where chicken houses have created a downstream almost flood, but you have a retention pond, but will that retention pond spill into, as he said, the two ponds that are down slope from them? So so what I'm asking is, how does your retention pond work? Is it in the back, or is it by back, is it in the east, or is it in the west, or
Yes, sir.
where is it?
It makes economical development sense to always put that in the lowest portion of your property. So in this case, that would be on the east side. So the water will continue to flow.
And the good thing about that, the way I see it, is then that lines up to go into their ponds automatically. So I see that as a plus, but at the same time, I'll give you notice that I've seen it happen. You know, you almost have floods from that much water runoff. And so I'm glad you're working with the retention pond. And I see someone in the court that you ought to go and copy, but I won't plug him too much. But I've seen it done and done well. And so hopefully you'll do it. If you do it, if you're approved to do it, that you'll do it and do it well.
Yes,
So
sir.
your reputation is going to depend on this. Thank you.
Justice Koger.
Yes, thank you, Judge. I think it would be helpful if you could speak as to the plans for at the front of the property. Aren't you planning some residential units there at the front of the property?
Yes, ma'am. The current concept plan does have 2 residential lots of, I believe, 1 1/2 to 2 acres that front on Mally Wagnon. That allows us to push the storage units further away from the public right-of-way. That's where the 500-foot separation comes in.
Okay, and could you also speak as to the size of the detention pond and the fact about the fire suppression?
Yes, ma'am. Preliminarily, we've sized that detention pond at about 36,000 square feet. It's approximately 4 feet deep. It may need to be deeper than that as we get into some more detailed design development. But it is a retention pond. It will be wet. The intent there is to have a certain volume of water available should there be a fire that the Round Mountain Volunteer Fire Department could drop a pump into to utilize to extinguish that fire.
Okay, and could you speak as to haven't you spoken to Mr. Reagan about some trees that he asked that be planted on the north side of the property? I think that might be helpful for the court to hear that.
I have not spoken to him directly, so I'll defer to Mr. Harris.
Okay.
And I've talked to several of the neighbors out there, Pete Reagan being one of them, and Ethan House being another one. And Pete and I did have a conversation actually yesterday about the fence line and the trees that down through there. And, you know, I agree that it would be a good idea to keep them for a barrier. And they're good, mature, nice trees, and there's no reason to take them out. We would just, move our fence over however far we needed to move it over so that those trees could still thrive.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
Justice Ricker.
Yes, sir. You're going to do the large-scale development on this also. Have you done the engineering for the stormwater plan for ADEQ, or will that be in the large scale?
I'm sorry, what was the question about ADQ?
Have you done the stormwater drainage plan for them? Will all the water from the impervious surface go into the detention pond? Will that detention pond overflow, or is it like a rain garden where it seeps into the ground?
So, yes, sir, we will complete the large scale, and we will permit with ADEQ. The pond is a wet pond, so it's designed to hold water, again, for that emergency use. Any additional runoff water will be slowly released at that, what we call the pre-developed rate, before it had rooftop and any kind of asphalt or gravel parking on it.
Okay, so none of the rainwater will be leaving that property, none of the contaminants from the buildings or the asphalt parking lot or the gravel parking lot, whatever, flowing onto the neighbor's property?
The stormwater will be released onto the neighbor's property, but it's controlled through a series, in this case, probably of orifices, what we call a detention pond outfall structure, so that the flow of water is slowly released and we don't flood any adjacent properties.
All right, and the springs that were alluded to earlier that are upstream from that will flow across this property and go down to the neighbors. None of that'll be impeded, so it'll go around all of this project, basically?
Yeah, my intent would be to redirect that around the detention pond and let it discharge to where it left this property in particular pre-development.
Okay. All right, that's all I have a question.
Justice Taylor.
Yes, earlier there was discussion regarding the waters of the U.S. and the lack of permitting or acknowledgement of that at least. Could you speak to whether that's a requirement for this project? If so, why, and if not, why not?
I'm not aware of any county regulations for addressing any wetlands issues. At McClellan, as a civil engineer, we do not do the wetland studies. I typically sub that out to an expert. I'll just say kind of generally, waters of the U.S., you know, the ditch on Maui Wagnon could be deemed waters of the U.S. because it also connects to the White River and to our drinking water source. So,
But the permitting comes in when? Only when you disturb one of those streams, right?
yes, sir. And there are no, on this property currently, there are no blue line streams, as we call them, on the U.S. Fish and Wildlife website that immediately identify that there's any wetlands on this property.
Okay, thank you.
Justice Secchi?
Thank you, Judge. This is just a comment. Joe Maynard has J&M Solutions. That was probably one of the finest solutions that he came up with, having to do with water and overflowing and what he did. To anybody out in the county, if y'all want to go to see what Joe has done, it is exemplary, very impressive, well thought out, and careful to care for our environment. So if anybody wants to do that, I don't mind saying I'm very impressed with what he did, and may it be a role model for others to follow. Thank you.
Any additional questions for the applicant? Justice Dennis?
Thank you, Judge. I don't know if it's for the applicants, but it's just something that I want to know, because I know that the gentleman back there talked about people being there, and I talked to one who's been there, their family's been there since the 1800s. And so how is it that you were able to buy this property? Who sold this property to you? I'm kind of baffled by that, since they wanted to hold on to it and
Yeah,
want
no,
it. How is it that it even sold?
Right. No, the property was listed on the MLS and has been listed for quite some time without any buyers. And I don't know that, I don't have the exact date on that, but it was a year or two that it's been on the market before we came along to buy it. There's another 10 acres that's next to us that is for sale that hasn't had a buyer in that same time frame. This is the same family that had both pieces of property that split up over a death in the family and I guess passed down to the next generation, and that's came up for sale. Yep. Right.
Justice Hires?
Thank you, Judge. You were aware when you purchased the property that it was zoned residential agricultural?
It's zoned agricultural, and that's, from my understanding, is agriculture is the default for all property out in Washington County.
So you did, okay.
So, yes, we were.
Okay. I just a comment, and I don't know when are we gonna have a separate discussion time, or is that something I can throw out there now?
Yeah, I mean, I invite you to share your comments now. I mean, I think maybe where the confusion came in on the last item is if we're gonna debate an ordinance, it has to be at the third reading, and we have to have a motion on it, so, but
Okay.
go ahead.
I just wanted to say, I feel like the neighbors here were requesting more time. We got an email that was sent out to all of us asking us to give them more time. I think J.P. Ricker was trying to give them some more time with his motion earlier to move it. So I would hope that we would indulge the neighbors in that and not let this go beyond a first reading, the same way we did the last one, to give them some of the time that they're asking us for. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Justice Hires. Justice Taylor?
Thanks, Judge. I would move that we ratify the CUP and suspend and go to a second reading.
Okay, first I'll take up the motion. You want to ratify the CUP. I have
It's passed by the Planning
As
Commission.
passed by the Planning Board. I had a motion by Justice Taylor and a second by Justice Simons. Okay. Counselor, will you please read that for the first time by title only?
An ordinance ratifying a conditional use permit recommended for approval by the Planning Board.
And then Justice Taylor, you'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules and move to the second reading?
Correct.
I have a motion by Justice Taylor, second by Justice Simons. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Ms. Meyer, will you just run through a roll for us, please?
Sean Simons. Fred Anderson. Kyle Lyons. Lisa Ecke? Charles Dean? Chandra Washington? Beth Koger? Robert Dennis? Suki Hires? Evelyn Rio Stafford? Willie Lemming? Gary Ricker? Butch Pond? Coleman Taylor?
Yes.
David Wilson?
That motion fails, so it'll move to the second reading next month. I think we would like to let's take a quick 5-minute break and let those who want to clear out, and I think some of us might need a break ourselves.
I see this like first ending you showed up, we did research and everything, so I visited and that's awesome. That's how it's going. We'll give you some $5 go now. I was gonna say. Hey, we're still here. Yeah, walk around, like, just stretch your leg, use the rest of it. Go for it.
I'm getting too old for this, you know?
Nobody heard, huh?
I'm older than everybody else here.
It's all recorded. Are you?
81.
Wow, really? That's my mom's age. 1942. Yep, my mom was born in 1941. Yeah, my mom was born in 1942.
Probably early part of 42.
January 14th. My dad was born. Yeah, my dad was born in 1940. January 29th. My father-in-law's birthday was yesterday. 1993. Yeah, so they're still kicking. That's amazing.
Yeah, there you go. How you doing, kiddo? Where would we want to go that now? I will turn on that road. 56 and it'll be
I'm giving everybody a 1 minute warning. We're gonna do it in 1 minute.
See ya.
Tell your colleagues.
That's what I told her. I was like, the rest of this stuff is gonna go faster. Yeah, the rest of this stuff's gonna go faster.
Okay, we better get back to business. The next item on our agenda is the consent agenda. Just a reminder, we have removed item number 6 for consideration. So do I have any motions with regard to the consent agenda? I thought it was just 6. I thought 2 people wanted 6 removed. Is that right? Okay, so just 6. With that, any motions with regard to the consent agenda? I have a motion to pass the consent agenda by Justice Secchi, a second by Justice Lemming.
I've got to read them.
Counselor Lester, will you read those ordinances by title only?
Item 1 is a resolution designating the persons in succession to fill the vacancy in the office of sheriff on an interim basis until such time as the vacancy is filled pursuant to Arkansas law. Item 2 is a resolution authorizing the submittal of an application to the Arkansas Rural Community Grant Program to assist the Boston Mountain Fire Department District 8 in the purchase of new bunker gear and an extractor. Item 3 is an ordinance creating the September 11th Exhibit Fund for 2023. Item 4 is an ordinance appropriating the total amount of $14,938.24 from the unappropriated reserves in the general fund to various line items in the comptroller's budget for 2023. Item 5 is an emergency ordinance calling a special election on the question of the levy of the annual dues of the Taneytown Volunteer Fire Department for the fire protection services and prescribing other matters pertaining thereto. Item 7 is an ordinance appropriating the amount of $6,517.41 from the unappropriated reserves in the county library fund to various line items in the county library budget for 2023. Item 8 is an ordinance dissolving one position in the road department budget and creating one position in the road department budget for 2023. Item 9 is an ordinance anticipating additional revenue in the amount of $100,000 in the Public Safety Grant Fund and appropriating said $100,000 to the Public Safety Grant budget for 2023. Item 10 is an ordinance correcting clerical errors in the sheriff's budget and the jail budget for 2023. Item 11 is an ordinance appropriating the total amount of $619,342 to various line items in the sheriff's budget and the jail budget for 2023. Item 12 is an ordinance appropriating the total amount of $337,734 from unappropriated reserves in the mobile video recorders line item in the sheriff and jail budgets for 2023. Item 13 is an ordinance appropriating the amount of $534,214 from the unappropriated reserves in the general fund and $95,761 from the unappropriated reserves in the jail fund to the vehicles line items in the sheriff's budget and jail budget for 2023. Item 14 is an ordinance appropriating additional revenue in the amount of $58,180 from the unappropriated reserves in the general fund to various line items in the sheriff's budget for 2023. Item 15 is an ordinance appropriating the total amount of $6,352.55 to the grants budget for 2023.
Thank you, Counselor Lester. I had a motion to pass the consent agenda by Justice Secchi, a second by Justice Lemming. Any further discussion on the consent agenda? Ms. Meyer, will you do the roll? Oh, public comments? Excuse me. Ms. Meyer, will you please do the roll?
Sean Simons, Fred Anderson, Kyle Lines, Lisa Ecke, Charles Dean, Chandra Washington, Beth Koger, Robert Dennis, Suki Hires, Evelyn Rio Stafford, Willie Lemming, Gary Ricker, Butch Pond, Coleman Taylor, David Wilson. He has time if he wants to punch it.
The consent agenda has been adopted. With that, we'll move to item number 6 on the consent agenda. Counselor, will you read that ordinance by title only?
An ordinance recognizing revenue and appropriating expenditures in the amount of $1,701,407.13 in the 3526 Rental Assistance ERA 2 Grant Fund for 2023.
Thank you. Motions or discussion on this item? Justice Rio Stafford?
I move to pass this item.
I have a motion to pass item number 6 by Justice Rio Stafford, second by Justice Simons. Any further discussion? Justice Koger?
Yes, thank you, Judge. I wanted to see the I wanted Accelerate to go through the presentation that we didn't get to hear the other night. I asked that that be, included. And I don't know if there's anyone here from Accelerate? Because I think that has some information, and then I have some more questions, but I'd like to hear that first. Maybe it'll clear up some things.
Hit the little, I think there should be a silhouette of a person. Thank you. There you go. You're hot, and remind us of your name, sir.
My name is Justin Fletcher. I am Vice President of Programs for Accelerate Foundation. I can walk you through the presentation. I don't know if they have it on the screen or not from last time. Sure, absolutely. So I think the main thing to talk about here is that there is an extraordinary opportunity for Washington County here. Once in a lifetime funding opportunity to really do something important and meaningful for the affordable housing crisis in the region and Washington County in specific. There's all sorts of different people that are lined up in the right place at the right time, being brought together, developers, community partners, all these folks. And this is an opportunity that I think is crucial to handling and addressing that issue. While we're waiting for that, I just thought I'd give a little context as far as who we are for some of the newer members. Accelerate Foundation, formerly known as Endeavor Foundation, is a public charity. It's been around for about 25 years. Our primary work is three things: identify the greatest social needs in the region, to connect, and that's connecting people with resources to address those needs, as well as connecting key stakeholders to come together to help deal with any gaps and fill those gaps, and if necessary, to drive. If there's not a leader to move forward, to take the lead position on that, that is something that we will do. We will drive when necessary. Our target population is called by a few different names. Oh, thank you. On slide 4, please. Thank you. So our target population, who are we talking about? It's called a couple of different names. One of those is ALICE, Asset Limited Income Constrained Employed. Another one is employed but at risk. Essentially, it is those people who are working but have such low-wage jobs that one good shove could knock them into the ditch. The problem is that this population is often invisible in terms of people seeing that they're in trouble, because the assumption is that if you're working, that you're okay, and that is often not the case. It's a population that is often forgotten, and it's almost stealth poverty, and that is why our foundation is specifically geared towards that population. On the next slide, you'll see a little bit about what we do. I'm not going to go in depth into this slide, but you might be familiar with a few of the things that are outlined in red. HARC, our HARC division that is part of the foundation, our work with housing assistance funds, specifically ERA, and also upskilling wage earners with Upskill NWA. But you might not be as familiar with our work in the affordable communities, which is the box there in green. So on the next slide, I'll just, again, this is an example of some of the work that we've done over the last 25 years. Just to highlight a couple of things, ERA, the Emergency Rental Assistance, we did the administering and distribution of that for Benton County, $14 million out to folks. So that has made us very, very familiar with how to administrate and report on ARPA dollars. And Upskill Northwest Arkansas, which Washington County was the first local government entity to come forward and provide support for that, and we thank you so much for that. But those are the things you may be more familiar with. These, on the next slide, are things that we've done in the housing space that you might not be as familiar with. We created a regional syndicate fund, which is a $40 million tax credit housing fund with 5 regional partners. We worked with this national syndicator who's done this for 50 years, and they said in that time we were one of 3 states that has ever pulled off a regional fund before. What that means is all of the money came from people within the region, within the community itself. And we did that because we wanted to make sure everyone is brought into this discussion and this solution. Cobblestone Farms, which you may know, the Cobblestone Farm community is an affordable housing project in West Fayetteville that we were instrumental in helping with the land donation for, with getting the key partners together, getting the correct zoning and annexation and de-annexation for it. A lot of that is currently under construction after a COVID delay and is planned to be done by the end of the year or early next. Macaulay's Place is another similar type of project, except that it's in Bentonville. The Bentonville Mayor's Affordable Housing Committee, Jeff Webster, who spoke last time and as our CEO, was appointed chair of that by Mayor Orman, and over the last year has worked with both the public and that committee to come up with a report and recommendations, and you may have read some of this in the news, around how to change local city policy for the first time to really encourage the development of affordable housing in Bentonville. And then we are also working with Rogers to help them with their affordable housing plan. So we do have somewhat extensive experience in this area, even though we are not ourselves a developer. If you go on to slide 9, we'll briefly talk about this. I don't think I need to tell you guys about this very much, but affordable housing is the biggest need. This data comes from our HARC division, which has helped 12,000 families last year connect to resources. And that data that we share on the HARC website clearly identifies that housing assistance remains the major issue in the region. This next slide, I'm not going to really dig too deep in this, especially because I'm sure it's kind of hard to read. The main thing that you need to take from this is a couple of things. One is that we are very data and analysis driven. We are really looking at what is behind these causes, how does this population break out, where do we need to go? And at the bottom here in the green, well, light green, darker green, and then there's blue. You'll see where the population that's really the target of this type of program really lives, especially in that green band, as we call it, 30 to 80% family median income, of which this is 61% of total, including the next population line up, but it's around 40% in this 30 to 80% in Washington County specifically. If you go to the next slide, it tells a little bit more about who these people are. We're talking about law enforcement, we're talking about medical services, we're talking about teachers, firefighters, people who are working every day to make our lives better and the lives of our children. And they just need a place to be able to live affordably. If you go to the next slide, this is actually an example of what we're talking about, just a quick view of what we're talking about. This is Cobblestone Farm Community. This is the renderings of what that's actually going to be like. Right now it's a big thing of ground out there, but this is what it will end up looking like with green space, community gardens, all these types of things. But in terms of what we call affordable communities, that's what we call our initiative. That's because we don't think it's enough to get people off the street. That is a huge thing, absolutely, but we do think you need to wrap it around with other services that we intend through this project, Macaulay's Place, and anything else to really kind of bring around with the help of HARC services for these people, because generally if you have problems with housing, you have other problems as well that you need help with. Okay, on this next slide, this is an example of what the impact would be of a type of project. This is not any, this is just an example project. But in this example of 150 units, this is what the rental savings would look like. So current fair market rate is around $1,500. This was in Bentonville, where we did this example. The city could bring together about $100 in rental savings through density bonuses, waiving impact fees, and also land donations. All those things could bring that down to $100. So $1,500 to $1,400, that doesn't necessarily sound like affordable housing. But the key of it is, when they bring that in, the developer then is set up to then bring in an additional $650 dollars in rental savings from federal incentives. And that's a capital leverage of 6.5 to 1. So citizens are actually ending up saving $750, dropping that $1,500 in half to $750. The economic impact, which we've gone through M-Plan, some of you may be familiar with that software to determine what that is, looks like $27 million over time. And because the projects that are aligned with the ERA $2, such as the Low-Income Housing Tax Credit Program, guarantees these rates for 35 years. That's $47 million in rental savings over the life of the program. On the next slide, you'll see another example. Again, I'm not going to go deep into it, but the second section, you'll see a little green line there. It's like, where does that $650 of rental savings come from in terms of federal incentives? It's there. It's the National LIHTC program. It's the state LIHTC program, the National Housing Trust, home funds, philanthropy. All of these things come together to create, anywhere between a 13 and 16 13 to 1 capital leverage on such a project for the low price of $1.5 million in this example. What could you build with that $1.5 million by itself? You could build a couple of houses, maybe a couple of rental units. But with this, you have the ability to bring $30 million to the table and create many, 100 or more of units for the region. So specifically this opportunity, if we go ahead and jump to slide 16. So this is coming from ERA $2. ERA 2, and you'll notice that there are two lines up here that are blank. One is construction, one is stabilization. These were not originally part of the ERA $2. It was for emergency rental assistance. But recently, in the past 6 months, ERA 2 was opened up to construction and stabilization services. And once we found out about that, we came and met many times with the previous administration over a series of months to make sure that they knew that money was there and that it could be used for this. Our CFO actually came down and helped actually get the paperwork in so that we met the deadline for that. On the next slide, What that actually looks like then is about $1.4 million that can go towards construction of affordable housing, and then around $300,000 that could go for stabilization services for folks. So these are the line items that they have allowed in ERA 2, up to 25% of the overall number for the construction, and up to 10% for stabilization. So again, money that is here and can be used only for these things. It's either used for these things or it's used for emergency rental assistance. So the next slide. And this is just where do we find our information? The U.S. Treasury gave it to us, and we've done an extensive review of this and feel very confident that this is exactly in line. They say right away that we encourage you to align with programs like LIHTC and like HOME. So we know that we are on the right track here. On the next page, as far as the stabilization funds, I mentioned HARC. Thousands and thousands and thousands of people come to HARC every year for help and connecting to resources. And because of that, the community themselves identify what the needs are, what the biggest needs are in the community. We connect them to agencies that help them. And if an agency does not help them, they come back to us and we connect them to one that does. So in the same way, the community is telling us what the biggest needs are, and they're also identifying for us what the best agencies that help them are as well, as opposed to us making subjective decisions over our favorite nonprofit provider or anything like this. The data will be able to point us to the way that the money should be used. And then finally, I want to come back to something I said at the beginning, which is we identify, connect, and drive. We drive only when we have to. And for this program, it needs an org that is knowledgeable and credible in the housing space, that can run an RFP to select this developer, that process, can understand and administer all the federal compliance and reporting that's required, has the accounting resources to do the audits that are required, and then can mitigate the risk by standing in between the county and the developer. If the developer defaults, the county will be coming to look at us to come up with those dollars, and we can stand in that gap. That said, if there is an organization that you are aware of that can do this and do all of those 5 things as well, you should pick them. Absolutely. Because again, we only drive when we need to. But we know that we have all of these capabilities, and we can do this today with your help. And it will go an immense way towards helping the people of Washington County with affordable housing. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Fletcher. Justice Cover, did you have questions?
Well, a few, yes. I just want to say that I'm very excited to see the county moving in this direction and making it a normal thing that we're going to spend money on things that will actually, help the people who need it the most. And on any day, we have 100+ people in our jail who are listed as homeless, or they have 7 Hills as their address. But I do have some questions. When you talk about the RFP,
Yes.
will that be open also to nonprofits, or will it just be open to private entity developers?
It will be open to anyone that is eligible under the guidelines. So in some cases, I do know that nonprofit would be eligible, such as the Community Development Corporation,
Right.
In Bentonville. Yes, they would absolutely be able to apply as long as they meet the guidelines stated in the Treasury guidance.
Okay. And when, I think you called it a syndicate community?
Yes.
Okay, what happens, okay, so $1.7 million is a lot of money to me, but when you're talking about this housing development, it's probably just a drop in the bucket. It probably wouldn't even buy the land where the housing development would be.
Right.
So what happens if you don't get all those other people to come together and you don't get your syndicate community to come up with, I think you said 30 million, is that
Yes.
right?
I mean, and that's on an example project. What the actual project would be, that it's indicative of where that project would be. The people, especially that we work with, have a lot of experience doing this, and once you get to the point where you're working with a syndicator, they know who to talk to that are interested in these projects, and they can bring that to bear. You also need developers who are extremely familiar with the Arkansas Development Finance Authority and the way that they work and the programs that they offer. The developer will need to bring a lot of expertise to this, which is why the RFP process is important, so important, in order for this to be as successful as it is. But we do know from our own personal experiences that there are developers in this area that can and have done this for decades.
So do we get our $1.7 million back if you don't get all the money? I mean, what happens to our $1.7 million?
Well, I mean, the $1.7 million will not disappear. We feel confident that it will be able to move forward into the process. But once again, we are standing between you and the developer and your responsibility to the Treasury for that money. So we would be accountable.
Okay, and you mentioned I can't think of it's the LIHT,
Low-income housing tax credit, yes.
But Arkansas is very limited. Don't we get just 8.5 million of that, and that's allocated to everyone across the state? So how much of that do you expect that we'd be able to get, that you'd be able to get just for this project?
It's hard to tell, and that's why we didn't give an example of the actual project that we would propose, because it's going to depend on the size of the land, where it's located, how many units can be done there. However, we do feel confident, especially with the wide array of talent that is in the developer community that is familiar with this and knows how to work the system, that they will be able to get that money. Depending on what programs we go with in terms of ADFA's LIHTC dollars, there could be different ways that we could apply those. So I know that sounds a little vague, but we'll know more details once we actually start moving forward with the project.
That's all I have right now. Thank you.
Justice Anderson.
You're showing that there's private individuals could contribute to this or housing to this project, is that right?
In general, the answer is no. It is generally done by banks and/or corporations through this process. However, what I can tell you is you should stay tuned because we are working on ways that may be able to happen.
My big concern is who manages these projects afterwards, that they don't just turn into trash after about 3 to 5 years.
Well, yeah, that's the beauty of going through such the ADFA LIHTC program, is because the compliance on that is ironclad. They must maintain the rents and also the property for 35 years in order to, that's all in the restrictions for the programs and for the tax credits involved. So that compliance is taken care of from the get-go if they are approved for the program in the first place.
That's all, thank you.
Justice Secchi?
Call the question.
I have a motion to call the question by Justice Secchi. Do I have a second? Okay, I have a motion to call the question by Justice Secchi, second by Justice Lyons. All those in favor? Those opposed? Ms. Meyer, we're going to call the question. Okay, just a second. Hold on, Ms. Meyer. We're going to move to public comments. Do we have any public comments on this matter?
Good evening, everybody. My name is Solomon Birchfield. I live on South Washington. I actually just stopped by after another meeting because I'm really excited to support the county considering this proposal. And sometimes I feel like I don't want to just give critical feedback. I want to give complimentary feedback. Thank you for looking at this and considering funding housing. I work in the space of homelessness and housing is most families' biggest cost every month. And so finding ways to develop affordable housing is going to promote well-being, promote safety in our community. Thank you for making this a priority. I know this is also a new thing for the county to be getting into, so I wanted, as someone with somewhat of a passion around this topic, I wanted to encourage you to proceed with openness, with prioritizing competition, and maximizing public benefit. The story of the crisis around housing and homelessness is a story around scarcity, the scarcity of affordable housing. You saw that 6 out of 10 families in Washington County have their income to their housing cost ratio way out of whack. So the part of the story is a story of scarcity, and anything we can do to promote development helps address that. The second part of the story is a story of exclusion. In our culture and history, we have so much around racism that has created disparities in home ownership, disparities in household wealth. You probably know about redlining and discrimination through mortgages. It's part of what explains the disparities we see in our community. Another thing the way that exclusion shows up right now today is that a lot of projects won't rent to tenants that have vouchers, right? That part of my income comes from a voucher that helps me pay rent. Or lots of places do discriminate against folks that have been through prison, that have paid their debt, but they have that on their record. It is estimated that 80% of people who have been to prison report that are homeless report that that's the thing that keeps them out of getting back into housing. People with prison backgrounds and homelessness. So making sure that we, in this RFP, I think help address the issues around exclusion, around source of income, around criminal background. And then lastly, the story around the crisis around housing and homelessness is also a story about greed in our culture. And so I encourage you as you step forward into this opportunity to make sure we're not just enriching a favorite developer. We want to maximize public benefit for public dollars, and that's why I encourage you to help shape whatever RFP would be offered to get these values into that RFP so the scoring criteria that ultimately decides which project gets the public dollars really does maximize public benefit. Thank you very much.
Public comments. You're ready to roll. State your name and where you're from.
Keith Smith. I live over in Lincoln at 10155 North Weddington Blacktop. And I think it's a wonderful thing to try to help people. Sometimes helping people is providing them a place to live. Sometimes helping people is not giving them something. I don't know that I understood a lot of what he said. He went through it so fast. But on the very first few of the slides, the one thing that made the difference in the rent being affordable for people was federal, I don't remember, it didn't say federal assistance, it said federal, I can't remember now exactly what it said. But it was federal intervention, you know, a little bit from us and a whole lot from the federal. I would like to see some programs where Washington County takes care of Washington County, you know, and not rely on federal assistance. I would just like to see some more programs like that. I think it would be a lot more beneficial to our community and to the people that's actually providing the assistance. Is the ones that gets the blessing out of it more than the people that actually receive the blessing. Anyways, that's all I had to say.
Thank you, sir. Public comments. Okay.
Evelyn Rio, Stafford, Fayetteville. Before we called the question, I was just going to comment about how I think this is an awesome thing that we're doing, and I'm very much in favor of it. Affordable housing is one of, if not the top issue in our region, and it's going to continue to be so as we continue to grow in population so dramatically, and we're continuing to we can't build houses fast enough, and that's why our housing prices are going up. But I did have a question from a constituent, and maybe Mr. Fletcher could come up here after I'm done just to come and give a comment with the answer. But the constituent was wondering about the ownership model for this. What Accelerate is considering in terms of who's going to own the land, versus who would own the actual building, and what kind of management model you're looking at. It may be, way too early in the process to actually, give definitive answers on that. But like I said, a constituent did reach out, so I'm wondering if maybe you could address that. Thanks.
Yes, of course. The ownership of the land and the development itself will be the property of the developer at the end of the process. They will again be restricted to the guidelines set up by the LIHTC program for the 35 years in order to maintain and make sure that those public dollars were used to maintain affordable housing over a long period of time. But they will have ownership during the first. It gets a little complicated during the first 10 years because the investors from the syndicate have a certain amount of ownership and interest in that. But after the 10 years, it is fully the property of the developer and the developer and the property manager.
Are you finished?
I am finished.
More public comments? Seeing none, we're going to take up the question. I think we had a motion by Justice Rios Stafford, second by Justice Dennis. Ms. Meyer, please call the roll. Was it Justice Dennis? No, just the original sponsor. Well, Simons. My apologies. Ms. Meyer, will you please call the roll?
All right. Sean Simons, Fred Anderson, Kyle Lyons, Lisa Ecke, Charles Dean, Shonda Washington, Beth Koger, Robert Dennis, Suki Hires, Evelyn Rio Stafford, Willie Lemming, Gary Ricker, Butch Pond, Coleman Taylor, David Wilson. Everybody got their buttons? I'll pass.
That item passes. Now, to keep me straight, I'm going to continue to go by the numbers on the agenda because it's way too late to try to switch those up, so please bear with me. I believe we're at item number 16. Is that correct? Counselor Lester, will you read that ordinance by title only?
An ordinance appropriating the amount of $50,000 from the unappropriated reserves in the general fund to the vehicles line item in the county coroner budget for 2023.
Justice Ecke.
Thank you, Judge. This is an ordinance appropriating this amount to the coroners. I will say that there are two Scrivener errors on the first whereas. It says request by the county coroner and not the coroner. And then on Article 1 also, it says items in the coroner's budget. It's missing an O, so they're just two Scrivener errors. As discussed in the committee during the 2023 budget process, it was inadvertently left off, and so therefore I move that we approve item number 16. Thank you.
I have a motion to pass item number 16 by Justice Ecke, a second by Justice Anderson. Any further discussion? Public comments? All right. Ms. Meyer, will you please call the roll?
Sean Simons, Fred Anderson, Kyle Lyons, Lisa Ecke, Charles Dean, Shonda Washington, Beth Koger, Robert Dennis, Suki Hires, Evelyn Rio Stafford, Willie Lemming, Gary Ricker, Butch Pond, Coleman Taylor, David Wilson. Pass.
Thank you. Item number 17, Counselor Lester, please read that ordinance by title only.
An ordinance recognizing additional revenue in the amount of $121,746 in the Law Enforcement Grant Fund and appropriating said $121,746 from the Law Enforcement Grant Fund to the SCAP FY 2021 budget for 2023.
Motions or discussion? Justice Lemming?
Oh, I just gonna say, this grant's it's a good deal, and we need to pass it.
I have a motion to pass by Justice Lemming, second by Justice Ricker. Any further discussion? Justice Coger?
Yes, thank you, Judge. It came to my attention after I spoke last meeting that several people on the court didn't realize what SCAP or what it is, and I asked that Jack come and speak briefly, Jack Kimball come and speak briefly as to what it does. I see he's back there. Could we have him do that?
Mr. Kimball, do you have a quick synopsis of this?
I didn't surprise him with this. I sent him an email earlier. I wouldn't do that.
Yes, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Jack Kimball. I'm the Technology Director for the Sheriff's Office. I've put together the SCAP grant every year, collected the data for the SCAP grant every year since we've been getting it since sometime around 2002. The SCAP grant is a Department of Justice grant that is a reimbursement grant for housing criminal aliens in our jail. It's designed to try to compensate for the expenses of doing that. Every year when we collect the data for the SCAP grant, the period that we're collecting the data is several years old. As a matter of fact, the 2022 SCAP grant went from July of 2000 until June of 2001. So when we collected that data, it's very old. It's people that have been in our jail have possibly even gone for quite some time by the time we collect the SCAP, we get the SCAP money. I'm not sure. That's the basic overview. Does anybody have any questions about it?
Could you speak as to how much time it takes for you to collect all that information that you do for the grant?
Yes, I can. So it depends. I do the computer collection of the information, collect the names and things like that, and then there's some people within the jail that help make sure that everyone meets the criteria, such as being convicted of one felony or 2 misdemeanors, and then to make sure that we haven't been previously paid for those detainees from a federal source, such as INS or U.S. Marshals. So usually that process is spread out over some time. This past year when we did our 2022 SCAP grant, we actually did it in 26 hours from the time we got the information to the time we got it all collected. But usually it's spread out over the period of about a week.
Okay, and so to get the grant, you have to give certain information to the Bureau of Prisons or the Bureau of Justice within a certain amount of time. Is that correct?
As part of the grant application?
Yes. Well, to get the money, you have to give certain information to the government within a time period. Is that correct?
The information we give when we apply the grant is basically a name and when they were in our facility. I think you're referring to the requirement that we used to have to do. We don't do it anymore. There was a requirement a couple years ago to do an ACIC transaction, Arkansas Crime Information Center transaction, that would give some information out. They told us several years ago that it was optional, and then it was going to be a mandatory next year. The next year we did the grant, they told us the same thing, kept saying it's optional. The last 2 years, they've kind of taken that requirement away, and it's optional, and we have actually stopped doing that.
So you don't give the home address and the work address of people to ICE or to anyone?
Not anymore, no.
Okay, that's good. Let me see, what else did I have? And so according to the last audit from the state, it costs $96.34 to house someone in our jail each day. So this money that we're getting, the $121,000, out of the bed days that we were paid for this grant, do you know about what that comes to per day that we will be reimbursed? Because last.
No, ma'am. I know it is, I think every year when we get the grant, it depends on how many people, how much we get, depends on how many people apply for the grant. It's never 100%.
Right.
But the grant isn't designed to pay us, it's just designed to help compensate. These are people that will be in our jail whether we get this grant or not. If we don't get the grant, we don't apply for it, we're still gonna house these people. We don't hold them just because we think we're gonna get the grant for them.
Right, okay. Well, I heard from Irvin Comancho, he's an immigrant rights person in Springdale and works in Washington County, and he wanted me to ask, he says that the immigrant community fears this.
Hold on, Justice Coger, we have a point of order. Justice Secchi?
The information to discussion is not germane to the.
I'll rearrange my question.
And point of professional courtesy, if this is for personal edification and the questioning is subjective, we ask that they just have a conversation amongst themselves and not waste the court's time. Thank you.
Thank you, Justice Secchi. Justice Coger, could you
I really
oblige
don't
that,
think
please?
I'm not wasting the court's time when I'm asking this. Our immigrant community already distrusts law enforcement, and I just feel like this makes it worse.
This
Just a second.
discussion.
Justice Secchi, I'm sorry, one more time.
Point of order, it has not germane to this discussion, and I would like our colleague to please be cognizant of that and aware of the rest of the assembly. Thank you.
Thank you, Justice Secchi. I'm going to agree with Justice Secchi. This gentleman's here to answer facts about the grant, Justice Coger. So I would like for you to give him the respect of answering facts.
Well, I would like to be able to finish my question because I keep forgetting what it is.
You have to have the floor to call the question, so.
Mr. Kimball, I'm sorry. Do you think that participating in this grant makes our immigrant community fearful?
No, I'm sorry. We're not going to do that. Justice Coger, we're done. Justice Dennis, you have the floor. I have a motion to call the question by Justice Dennis, a second by Justice Secchi. All those in favor? Those opposed? Ayes have it. Public comments. Seeing none, we're going to take up the question. I have a motion to pass item number 17 by Justice Lemming, a second by Justice Ricker. Ms. Myra, will you please call the roll?
Sean Simons. Fred Anderson. Kyle Lyons. Lisa Ecke. Charles Dean. Shonda Washington.
Abstain.
Beth Koger. Robert Dennis. Suki Hires. Evelyn Rio Stafford. Willie Lemming. Gary Ricker. Butch Pond. Coleman Taylor. David Wilson. Pass.
Ordinance passes. Item number 18. Counselor, will you read that ordinance by title only, please?
An ordinance appropriating the amount of $554,210 from the unappropriated reserves in the jail fund to the jail budget for the jail medical contract for 2023.
Justice Secchi?
Thank you, Judge. I just want to make a point that this comes out of the jail fund and not out of county general. And all the discussion that we had was done during committee. So I move to pass item number 18. Thank you.
I have a motion to pass item number 18 by Justice Secchi. I think I heard a second over here by Justice Ricker first. Any other discussion or questions? Public comments? Seeing none, I have a motion to pass item number 18 by Justice Secchi, a second by Justice Ricker. Ms. Meyer, will you please call the roll?
Sean Simons. Fred Anderson. Kyle Lyons. Lisa Ecke. Charles Dean. Shonda Washington. Beth Koger. Robert Dennis. Suki Hires. Evelyn Rio Stafford. Willie Lemming. Gary Ricker. Butch Pond. Coleman Taylor. David Wilson. Pass.
Thank you. That ordinance is passed. Item number 19, Counselor Lester, will you please read that by title only?
A resolution expressing support for the Tunnel of Towers Foundation's 9/11 Never Forget mobile exhibit to visit Washington County.
To start this off, if you guys will oblige me, we have some great employees of our Veteran Service Office that have been sitting back there patiently all night long. If you guys want to come forward and introduce this and speak to it a little bit.
Thank you. All right, my name is Ryan Davis. I'm here on behalf of Ben Dykes tonight. Talk about the Tunnel to Towers. I know he had talked about it some during the last Quorum Court meeting. So for all of you who don't know, the Tunnels to Towers is basically a mobile 9/11 exhibit. It's a 61-foot trailer that expands out into about 1,100 square feet. Has items from 9/11, from Ground Zero there, has recordings, and also the exhibit comes with two firefighters who were present there on 9/11, so they can speak. It's a great opportunity for, myself. I've never had the opportunity to go to New York City to visit Ground Zero, so it's kind of that opportunity for locals here in Washington County to maybe learn a little bit about 9/11 and just kind of think back to where they were at, and then those that, it's hard to believe it was 22 years ago. So, you got 22-year-olds who wasn't even alive back then. So for the exhibit, about 94 cents of every dollar goes to what they call mortgageless housing, or a house without a mortgage. Basically, it's a free house for first responders in need, for veterans in need. They also, the nonprofit also purchases old abandoned hotels and remodels them, refurbishes them for housing for homeless veterans, individuals, first responders who are experiencing homelessness issues. And the event would be from May the 18th to May the 21st, with the 17th being set up and the 27th being a tear down. So that's what I have to say. Any questions?
Thank you, sir. Your name one more time?
Ryan Davis.
Introduce your colleague with us.
Go ahead, get up there.
I'm Holly Sink.
This is her second week.
Miss Holly is, yes, she's new to our service office, and we're proud to have her. Justice Secchi, did you have some comments?
I just want to say this is a partnership that you, Judge, have entered it with the county, other organizations and businesses to bring this tunnel to the towers exhibit. And I asked to take this off the consent agenda because I want the public to know that we need to raise some funds to bring this exhibit. It's going to cost us $25,000 to bring it, and if we can get the word out there, so many people watch us on YouTube, Quorum Court meetings, that is why I wanted to do that. I know where I was. Other people know where they were. I'm a retired flight attendant. I saw that first aircraft hit the towers. It shook me. And what I remember about it, the residual effects to that, was that on Capitol Hill and across this beautiful country, people came together and we were singing God Bless America, land that I love. It wasn't us and them, Republicans, Democrats, and whatnot. It was us, the United States of America, because we were Americans. And I think that that unites us, and I want that to continue to unite us. And let's try and raise a lot of money. Director Dykes shared that Justice Koger gave, and that's great, and others are giving. And today I broached a company, and they said, yes, they'll give. And so if you can just ask, and let's get this money raised. Yes. Thank you. And I make a motion to pass this resolution.
I have a motion to pass by Justice Secchi, I think.
And God bless America.
Justice Lemming had the second. Justice Rio Stafford.
Thanks. Before y'all go, I just had another quick question.
Yes.
And I'm proud to support this. I think this is a really great initiative. I'm glad we're doing it. As JP Ecke mentioned, we all do remember where we were on 9/11. I was working in television news on the West Coast where one of the planes was headed with was supposed to arrive and never did. It ended up crashing in the field in Pennsylvania. And we were on the air for 48 hours straight. It was a day in my career that I'll never forget. But I wanted to ask just more about the mechanics. Do y'all have a clear picture about the fundraising deadline?
So the fundraising, I mean, to tell you the truth, is if it is in its infancy. I mean, we're just getting it started. I think we've given a couple checks, Judge. Well, I think, Ben, we've got about 4,000 so far. So we really got to get the donations and get this campaign going because, March is not far away.
It's not that far away. Is there a certain cutoff deadline beyond which we can't make it to get them to come here?
Right now, they're not booked during that time.
Okay.
So we're in close contact with Miss Eaton there, the coordinator. I believe it's basically it's about a month out.
Okay.
Is when it's got to be finalized.
Gotcha.
Because that's when a lot of other plans such as security, because we'll have to provide security around the clock for it. So getting a definitive answer on whether or not we're going to be able to afford it, and then stepping forward and going through with the more innate details.
Okay, great.
So
and I'm asking because I work in marketing now, and I know that just from a psychological marketing perspective, giving people a deadline of you got to give by this date or it's not going to happen.
And
helps,
the interesting part
helps
is
people to actually
I
pull the
understand.
trigger.
The interesting part is it's never been to Arkansas. It's
Yeah.
been to most states in the nation so far, but hasn't been to Arkansas yet. So
we need to get it here.
Yeah.
We'll work with the Veteran Service Office and release more of those details. Tonight really takes us from 0 to 60 in terms of now we have the account established by our ordinance on the consent agenda, and of course now we pass the resolution to show our intent. So I think we'll get some more concrete answers for that, absolutely, and we will definitely share those with you. Justice Dennis?
You answered it for me in a way, but I just want to know, who do we write the checks to?
Washington County.
Washington County?
And we have that special fund now set up, and our Treasurer Hill's handling that for us.
Okay, folks, write your checks, Washington County, send them to the courthouse.
I'd like to piggyback off what Justice Ecke said. We want to make a big deal of everyone who partners with the county of this. We appreciate Justice Koger and her contribution. Tonight, Veteran Service Office delivered us a check from Pig Trail Harley Davidson that was for a pretty good substantial chunk of money. So I appreciate all those donations that are being contributed. So, any further discussion? Any public comments? All right, I have a motion to pass item number 19 by Justice Ecke, a second by Justice Lemming. Ms. Meyer, will you please call the roll?
Sean Simons. Fred Anderson. Kyle Lyons. Lisa Ecke. Charles Dean. Shonda Washington. Beth Koger. Robert Dennis. Suki Hires. Evelyn Rio Stafford. Willie Lemming. Gary Ricker. Butch Pond. Coleman Taylor. David Wilson. Pass.
All right, I appreciate everybody this evening. Long meeting with a lot of agenda items, but with that, we're going to the County Finance and Budget Committee reports in the packet, and with that, we're going to be adjourned.